Abraham was 99 years old when God promised him a son, and his wife Sarah was 90. By every logical standard, this was biologically impossible. Yet this impossible promise became the foundation for God's plan to bless every nation on earth. But here's what most people don't know about Abraham's story. His journey of faith wasn't a smooth path of unwavering belief. He made mistakes, took detours, and sometimes tried to help God fulfill his promises in his own way. Today, you're getting the complete, unvarnished account of Abraham's life. Every triumph, every failure, and every moment that shaped him into the father of faith. But before we dive in, if you're new to this channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We're building a global community here. So without further ado, let's begin, shall we? Picture the vast desert sky, endless and deep blue, stretching beyond what eyes can see. Stars scatter across this canvas like tiny diamonds, each one carrying ancient light from distant worlds. The wind whispers through sand dunes, telling stories older than memory itself. In this quiet moment, something extraordinary happens. A voice speaks, not with thunder or earthquake, but with the gentle authority of one who made the stars themselves. This voice will change everything for one man, and through him touch every corner of our world. His name was Abram, though history would know him differently. He lived 4,000 years ago when the world was young and wild. Cities rose like islands in oceans of wilderness. People worshipped gods of stone and gold, seeking meaning in rituals as old as civilization. But this story isn't about those gods. It's about the God who chose one ordinary man to begin something beautiful, a promise that would echo through generations, a blessing meant for every family on earth. Abram didn't know any of this when his journey began. He was simply a man living his life, tending his flocks, caring for his family. He had no idea that the creator of the universe was watching him, preparing to call his name. The ancient world pulsed with life and danger. Mighty empires stretched across continents. Kings built towers that scraped the sky, declaring their own greatness. Trade routes connected distant lands, carrying spices and stories from one culture to another. Yet in all this grandeur, something was missing. The connection between heaven and earth had grown thin. People had forgotten the voice that spoke the world into being. They crafted idols with their hands, bowing to things that could neither see nor hear. Into this world, God would speak again, not to kings or priests, but to a nomad with weathered hands and a heart ready to listen. The choice seems impossible to understand. Why Abram? Why not someone more important, more powerful? Perhaps that's exactly the point. God delights in choosing the unlikely. He sees something in ordinary hearts that the world overlooks: faith, trust, the willingness to step into the unknown when love calls your name. Abram's story begins in a place of comfort and ends in a land of promise. Between these 2 points stretches a lifetime of walking with God. Sometimes the path was clear, sometimes clouded with uncertainty, but always, always, the promise remained. This is more than ancient history. It's the story of what happens when someone says yes to the impossible, when ordinary faith meets extraordinary grace, when a man decides to trust the voice that calls him into mystery. As you listen to this story, let yourself drift into those ancient landscapes. Feel the desert wind, see the stars that Abraham counted, walk beside him as he discovers that the God who made everything also knows his name. The journey is about to begin, a journey that started 4,000 years ago and continues today, because the same God who called Abraham still calls to hearts willing to listen, still makes promises to those ready to believe. Rest now, and let this ancient story carry you to places where faith becomes sight, where promises become reality, and where one man's yes to God becomes a blessing for the world. The ancient city of Morning Light touches the walls of painting them gold against the blue sky. This city stands proud beside great rivers, where water flows like life itself through carefully carved channels. Gardens bloom in neat rows, fed by the ingenuity of human hands. Pulses with activity and ambition. Merchants arrive from distant lands, their camels heavy with goods. Silk from the east, precious stones from the south, metals hammered into beautiful shapes. The markets buzz with voices speaking different languages, all united by the ancient art of trade. Tall towers rise toward heaven, their sides decorated with glazed bricks that catch sunlight like jewels. These ziggurats stand as monuments to human achievement. People climb their steps daily, carrying offerings to gods they've carved from stone and precious metals. In this world of progress and prosperity, young Abram grows up. His father Terah works with skilled hands, shaping clay and metal into idols for the temples. Their workshop fills with the sounds of hammers and fire, creating gods for people to worship and fear. The irony runs deep. Terah crafts objects that cannot speak, yet people pray to them for wisdom. He forms hands that cannot help, yet families trust them for protection. Each day he creates new deities while the true God remains unknown to his household. Abram watches his father work, learning the trade, but perhaps sensing something amiss. How can gods be made by human hands? How can the created thing be greater than the one who creates it? These questions might not have formed words yet, but they stir in his young heart like seeds waiting for rain. The culture of flows around him like a great river. Children learn to read and write on clay tablets, mastering the wedge-shaped marks that preserve human thoughts. Schools teach mathematics and astronomy, medicine and law. This civilization has achieved wonders that will echo through history. Yet for all its learning, remains spiritually hungry. People sacrifice their children to gods who demand blood. They consult stars and omens, seeking direction from silent heavens. Fear mingles with worship, superstition with genuine longing for the divine. Abram's family follows these customs, as natural as breathing in their world. They observe festivals and rituals, make offerings, and pray to household gods. Terah's workshop provides the very idols that fill their neighbors' homes and temples. But something sets this family apart, though they don't yet understand what. Perhaps it's a restlessness, a sense that there must be more than what they see. Perhaps the true God is already preparing their hearts for the moment when he will speak. The city's wealth impresses visitors from across the known world. Houses rise 2 and 3 stories high, with courtyards where families gather in the evening coolness. Servants tend gardens where date palms provide sweet fruit and blessed shade. Trade guilds organize craftsmen into powerful groups. Potters, weavers, metalworkers, and jewelers all have their place in complex society. Laws govern commerce and family life, written in careful script on tablets that survive millennia. Religious festivals mark the seasons, bringing the whole city together in celebration and reverence. Processions wind through streets as priests carry statues of gods from temple to temple. Music and incense fill the air, creating an atmosphere thick with mystery and devotion. In this setting, Abram becomes a man. He learns his father's trade, understands the ways of his people, grows familiar with the rhythms of urban life. Yet something in his spirit remains unsettled, as if waiting for a voice that has not yet spoken. The gods of seem so real to those who worship them. They have names and stories, personalities and preferences. Priests interpret their will through elaborate rituals. People shape their entire lives around pleasing these silent deities. But Abram will discover that the real God needs no image carved by human hands. He requires no temple built with human effort. He speaks with his own voice, makes his own promises, and chooses whom he will bless according to his own mysterious wisdom. For now, though, Abram simply lives and learns, grows and dreams, unaware that the Creator of all things is watching him with love, preparing to call his name and change his destiny forever. The call of Abram, silence settles over like a gentle blanket. The evening's work is finished, the markets have closed, and families gather in their courtyards to share the day's final meal. Stars begin their ancient dance across the darkening sky, the same stars that have watched over this land since time began. Abram sits quietly, perhaps looking up at those countless lights. His life follows familiar patterns: work and rest, seasons and festivals, the comfortable rhythms of a settled existence. He has a home, a family, a place in the community, everything a man could want for security and peace. Then something extraordinary happens. A voice speaks into the stillness of his heart, not with human words that fade with the wind, but with divine authority that echoes in the deepest places of the soul. The God who made all things chooses this moment, this man, this quiet evening to change everything. Leave your country, the voice says with infinite gentleness and unmistakable command. Leave your people and your father's household and go to the land I will show you. The words hang in the air like morning mist, beautiful and mysterious. Leave everything familiar, everything safe, everything that gives life meaning and security. The request seems impossible, almost cruel in its demands. But then comes the promise, sweet as honey and solid as stone. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Abram's heart pounds as these words sink deep in his understanding. A great nation from his family, his name remembered with honor, blessing flowing through him to every corner of the earth. The promises feel too wonderful to believe, yet too real to doubt. The psychological weight of this moment stretches beyond description. Everything in Abram's life has prepared him for stability, for staying rooted in familiar soil. His identity comes from his place, his people, his heritage. To leave means to tear away pieces of himself. Yet something in the voice compels trust. This isn't a human voice that might lie or change its mind. This is the voice of truth itself, the word that spoke stars into existence and breathed life into dust. When such a voice makes promises, the wise heart listens. Abram feels the pull of two worlds. Behind him lies everything known and comfortable, the home where he was born, the business he has learned, the gods his family has always served. These things offer the security of the familiar, the peace of the predictable. Ahead lies the unknown, wrapped in mystery and promise. A land he has never seen, a future he cannot imagine, a calling that defies every practical consideration. No map shows the way, no guide offers to lead the journey, but the voice that calls him is not unknown. Somehow, in ways deeper than understanding, Abram recognizes this as the voice he has been waiting to hear all his life. The voice that answers the questions his heart has carried in silence. The voice of the one true God. The decision arrives not through careful reasoning, but through simple trust. Some moments in life demand logic and planning. Others require the courage to step into mystery guided only by love. This is such a moment for Abram. He doesn't fully understand what he's agreeing to. He can't see the end of the story or know the cost of obedience. But he recognizes the voice of life itself calling his name, and his heart responds with the most beautiful word in any language, yes. The transformation begins immediately, though it will take a lifetime to complete. In saying yes to God's call, Abram starts becoming the man God always knew he could be, the man whose faith would become a blessing to every family on earth. This is how all great journeys begin, not with complete understanding, but with trust. Not with perfect plans, but with willing hearts. Not with guarantees of ease, but with promises from the one who keeps his word forever. The stars shine a little brighter as Abram makes his choice, the same stars that will one day remind him of God's promise when doubt creeps in, the same stars his descendants will count when they remember this moment of faith. Tomorrow will bring the difficult work of preparation. Tonight brings the sweet peace of surrender to the will of perfect love. Journey to Haran, dawn breaks over Ur as Abram begins the enormous task of leaving everything behind. Servants hurry through the household, gathering possessions and preparing for a journey none of them fully understand. The familiar sounds of the city, merchants calling their wares, children playing in the streets, craftsmen at their work, will soon become memories. Terah, Abram's father, decides to join the strange exodus. Perhaps he senses something important happening, though he doesn't fully grasp the divine calling that moves his son. Family loyalty runs deep in their culture, and where one goes, others often follow. Sarai, Abram's wife, packs their belongings with careful hands. She asks few questions, trusting her husband's judgment even when the destination remains unclear. Her heart holds its own mixture of excitement and fear as she prepares to leave the only life she has ever known. Lot, Abram's nephew, also joins the growing caravan. Young and eager for adventure, he sees opportunity in this journey to unknown lands. The world beyond Ur stretches wide with possibilities, and his uncle's confidence gives him courage to venture forth. The family gathers their flocks and herds, their servants and belongings, everything needed for life in foreign places. Camels and donkeys carry household goods, while sheep and goats follow in bleeding streams. What begins as a household becomes a small community on the move. Their destination is Haran, a city far to the northwest where trade routes meet and cultures blend. It lies roughly halfway between Ur and the mysterious land God has promised to show Abram. Perhaps Terah suggests this stopping place, or perhaps God guides them there for reasons not yet revealed. The journey stretches across hundreds of miles through landscapes both beautiful and harsh. They follow ancient paths worn smooth by countless caravans, stopping at wells and oases where travelers have rested for generations. Each day brings new sights, new challenges, new reminders of how far they've traveled from home. Desert winds carry sand that stings the eyes and grits between the teeth. The sun beats down mercilessly during the day, while nights bring cold that seeps through the warmest blankets. Yet something sustains them through these hardships, the sense of moving toward destiny rather than merely away from comfort. Haran welcomes them with the bustle of a thriving commercial center. Merchants from many nations gather here to trade goods and stories. The air fills with languages Abram recognizes and others completely foreign to his ears. This cosmopolitan atmosphere feels both exciting and overwhelming after the familiar rhythms of Ur. The family settles into life in their new city, finding house and work, establishing routines that make strange places feel more like home. Terah seems content with this arrangement, perhaps believing the journey has reached its natural end. Haran offers prosperity and opportunity, a pleasant place to spend one's remaining years. But Abram carries within his heart the memory of a voice and the echo of promises yet unfulfilled. Haran feels like a pause in the story rather than its conclusion. The land God promised to show him lies farther west, beyond horizons he has yet to explore. Years pass in this in-between place. Terah grows older, his hair white as wool, his steps slower than in the vigorous days of Ur. The desert journey has taken its toll on his aging body, though his spirit remains strong. He finds peace in watching his family prosper in their adopted home. Then comes the day when Terah's long life reaches its gentle end. The man who crafted idols in Ur, who followed his son into the unknown, breathes his last breath in a foreign land. His death marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another in God's unfolding plan. Grief mingles with a strange sense of release as Abram buries his father in Haran's soil. The ties that bound him to the past grow lighter. The voice that called him from Ur whispers again in his heart, reminding him that the journey is not finished, the promise not yet fulfilled. Haran has been a place of transition, a necessary pause between the life left behind and the life waiting ahead. Here, Abram learned to trust God's provision in foreign places. Here, he discovered that home is not a location, but a relationship with the one who guides every step. The time has come to leave Haran behind, to venture deeper into the unknown. The real journey is just beginning. Into Canaan. The morning sun paints the hills of Canaan in shades of gold and green as Abram crests the final ridge of his long journey. Before him spreads a land of rolling meadows and ancient olive groves, where streams run clear and the air carries the scent of wild flowers. This is the place God promised to show him, and it exceeds every dream. Yet as his caravan descends into the valleys, Abram quickly discovers he is not entering an empty land. People have lived here for generations, their settlements dotting the landscape like islands in a green sea. The Canaanites have built their cities and planted their fields, established their customs and claimed their territories. These encounters with local tribes unfold with careful diplomacy. Abram approaches as a peaceful nomad seeking grazing rights and water access, not as a conqueror claiming ownership. The Canaanites watch this wealthy stranger with curiosity and caution, wondering what brings him to their ancestral lands. Some meetings flow smoothly, sealed with gifts and mutual respect. Tribal leaders recognize that Abram's large household brings both opportunity and challenge. His trade goods are welcome, but his flocks will compete for pasture. Negotiations require wisdom and patience as different cultures learn to coexist. Other encounters prove more tense. Not every tribe welcomes strangers, even peaceful ones. Some view Abram's wealth with suspicion or envy. Others fear that temporary visitors might become permanent neighbors. The art of survival in this land includes reading faces and understanding unspoken boundaries. Through it all, Abram carries the echo of divine promise in his heart. To your offspring I will give this land, God had said, though the timing and method remain mysterious. For now, he lives as a guest among people who consider themselves the rightful owners, trusting that God's word will prove true in its proper season. The nomadic life begins in earnest as Abram learns to follow the seasons and the grass. When pastures grow thin in one area, the entire household packs up and moves to fresh grazing. Tents become home, while permanent buildings remain the luxury of settled peoples. This constant movement teaches valuable lessons about holding possessions lightly. What cannot be carried must be left behind. What serves no practical purpose becomes a burden. Life simplifies to its essentials: shelter, sustenance, and the relationships that make survival possible. At significant locations throughout Canaan, Abram builds altars to honor the God who called him from Ur. These stone monuments mark important moments and places, creating a geography of faith across the landscape. Each altar tells a story of divine encounter, of promises received and trust renewed. The altar near Shechem stands where God first appeared to Abram in Canaan, confirming the promise with visible presence. Another rises at Bethel, where heaven seemed to touch earth during a particularly clear night of prayer. These sacred spaces become anchors for the soul in a life of constant movement. Building altars also serves as testimony to the local peoples. Unlike their elaborate temples to multiple gods, Abram's simple stone structures honor one deity, the invisible God who speaks with authority and keeps his promises. Some Canaanites approach these altars with curiosity, sensing something different about this stranger's faith. The rhythm of nomadic life soon becomes familiar. Dawn brings the bleating of goats and the lowing of cattle as servants prepare for another day of grazing. Evening calls the flocks home to safety, while families gather around fires to share food and stories. Children learn to walk on uneven ground, to help with simple tasks, to find wonder in the changing landscape. They grow up knowing that home is not a building, but a family, not a place, but a presence. This mobile life shapes character in ways that settled existence cannot. Abram's household grows in numbers and influence as word spreads of his fair dealing and generous spirit. Some locals join his company, drawn by opportunity or simple admiration for his character. His reputation as a man of integrity opens doors that might otherwise remain closed. The promise of land seems both near and far as months turn to years in Canaan. Near because Abram walks its paths daily, knows its seasons intimately, loves its beauty deeply. Far because he remains a tenant rather than an owner, dependent on the goodwill of others for grazing rights and water access. But faith learns to live in such tension, holding earthly realities lightly while gripping divine promises firmly. God's timing rarely matches human expectations, yet his faithfulness never wavers. The land will belong to Abram's descendants in God's perfect time. For now, it is enough to dwell in the place of promise, to walk where future generations will build their cities, to worship the true God in a land that does not yet know his name. Famine and flight to Egypt. The rains fail to come that year in Canaan. Week after week, the sky remains clear and hard as polished bronze, offering no relief to the parched earth below. Grass withers and streams slow to a trickle, then disappear altogether. What began as a dry season becomes a desperate drought that threatens all life in the land. Abram watches his flocks grow thin, their ribs showing through dusty coats as they search for any green thing to eat. The servants dig deeper into wells that yielded sweet water just months before, finding only mud and stones. Children look to the sky each morning, hoping for clouds that never appear. The local Canaanites face the same crisis, their own herds suffering, their own crops failing. Competition for scarce resources grows fierce as survival instincts override the courtesies of peaceful coexistence. What little water remains becomes precious beyond gold or silver. In this desperate hour, Abram faces a choice that will test the very foundations of his faith. God brought him to this land with promises of blessing, yet now the land itself seems to curse his presence. Should he remain and trust divine provision, or should he act to save his family and flocks? Word comes from travelers that Egypt remains green and fertile, blessed by the annual flooding of the great Nile River. While Canaan suffers, Egypt enjoys abundance. The contrast seems to mock God's promise, raising questions that Abram dare not speak aloud but cannot ignore. The decision to leave Canaan arrives through practical necessity rather than divine direction. Abram hears no voice from heaven commanding or forbidding the journey south. He must choose based on wisdom and responsibility, hoping that God understands the pressures of leadership in desperate times. Preparations for the journey to Egypt unfold with heavy hearts. This feels different from the earlier departures. Not a step forward in faith, but a retreat from promise. The very land God gave them now forces them to seek refuge elsewhere. The irony cuts deep. Yet as the caravan moves south toward Egypt, relief begins to ease the burden of difficult choices. Green appears in the distance, first as a faint line, then as a rich band of vegetation marking the Nile's life-giving path. Water flows freely here, supporting fields of grain and gardens of vegetables. But Egypt brings its own dangers, as Abram quickly realizes. Sarai's beauty, preserved despite their years of marriage, attracts unwanted attention in this foreign court. Egyptian customs differ from those of Canaan, and a foreign woman married to a foreign man might face threats unknown in more familiar territories. Fear creeps into Abram's heart like a cold wind. What if the Egyptians decide to eliminate him in order to claim his beautiful wife? In a land where he has no family connections, no tribal protections, no legal standing, such dangers feel terrifyingly real. The deception unfolds almost naturally, born of fear rather than carefully planned dishonesty. When Egyptian officials inquire about the lovely woman traveling with him, Abram presents Sarai as his sister rather than his wife. Technically true, she is his half-sister, but functionally false in its intention to mislead. The plan works too well. Pharaoh himself notices Sarai's beauty and takes her into his royal household, showering Abram with gifts as compensation for his sister. Sheep and cattle, servants and camels flow to Abram's camp, making him wealthy beyond his previous dreams. But success built on deception carries its own poison. Abram prospers materially while suffering spiritually, his conscience troubled by the lies that brought abundance. Sarai endures circumstances she never chose, paying the price for her husband's fear-driven choices. Divine intervention comes in the form of serious diseases that plague Pharaoh's household. The Egyptian ruler, wise in the ways of his people, recognizes these afflictions as supernatural judgment. Investigation reveals the truth about Sarai's identity and Abram's deception. Pharaoh's response shows remarkable restraint and wisdom. Rather than executing the foreign deceiver, he summons Abram for a royal rebuke. "What have you done to me?" he demands. "Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she was your sister?" The questions hang in the air like accusations, each one highlighting the moral failure of God's chosen man. Abram has no defense beyond his fear, no justification beyond his desire to protect himself. He stands exposed before a pagan king who shows more integrity than he has demonstrated. Yet even in this moment of shame, God's protection remains evident. Pharaoh could have punished Abram severely, could have kept Sarai for himself, could have confiscated all the wealth gained through deception. Instead, he orders them to leave Egypt with their possessions intact. The journey back to Canaan unfolds in uncomfortable silence, each mile marking the distance between who Abram is and who he is called to be. The famine that drove them to Egypt has ended, the rains have returned, but the lesson learned in failure will echo through generations. Return and wealth. The hills of Canaan welcome Abram home with rolling green pastures and streams that flow clear and sweet after the blessed rains. The famine has ended as suddenly as it began, leaving the land refreshed and fertile. Wildflowers carpet the meadows in brilliant colors, while new grass provides rich grazing for the returning flocks. Yet Abram's heart carries burdens heavier than all the wealth he accumulated in Egypt. The gold and silver, the servants and livestock that fill his caravan represent both divine blessing and human failure. God protected him through his deception, but the memory of fear-driven choices weighs heavily on his conscience. Sarai rides beside him in thoughtful silence, her own heart processing the trauma of those months in Pharaoh's palace. She endured what no wife should suffer because of her husband's lack of faith. Though they are reunited now, some wounds take time to heal. Some trust requires patience to rebuild. The servants whisper among themselves about the strange ways of their master's God. This deity neither they saw nor heard somehow struck down the powerful Pharaoh of Egypt to protect a foreign woman. Such power commands both respect and wonder from those who witnessed its effects. Lot travels with his uncle's enlarged household, his own flocks and herds having multiplied during their time in Egypt. The young man's eyes shine with ambition as he surveys their combined wealth. Two households have become prosperous enough to rival local chieftains, a development that will soon create new challenges. Abram returns first to Bethel, where he built an altar before the journey to Egypt. The stone structure stands unchanged, weathered but solid, a silent witness to simpler times when trust came more easily. Here he calls on the name of the Lord, seeking renewal of relationships strained by recent failures. Prayer flows from a humbled heart as Abram kneels beside his altar. The words come haltingly at first, weighted with shame and regret, but grace meets confession with gentle forgiveness, and peace begins to replace the turmoil that has troubled his spirit since Egypt. The land around Bethel teems with life as both households settle back into the rhythms of nomadic existence. Servants pitch tents and establish camps, while herders lead animals to fresh pastures. The abundance of grass and water makes the recent famine seem like a distant nightmare. But prosperity brings its own problems. Abram's servants and Lot's servants begin to quarrel over grazing rights and water access. What seemed like plenty when viewed from a distance proves inadequate when shared between two large households. Competition breeds resentment, and resentment threatens to become open conflict. The disputes start small, arguments over which flock drinks first at a particular well, or whose animals have claim to a choice meadow. But small conflicts grow larger when left unaddressed, especially among men whose livelihoods depend on their flock's welfare. Abram watches these tensions develop with growing concern. His relationship with Lot means more to him than any material possession, yet their mutual prosperity threatens to destroy the family bond they've always shared. The nephew he loves like a son is becoming a rival through no fault of either man. The wealth that seemed like blessing from Egypt now reveals its potential for curse. Riches can divide families as easily as they provide security. Success can breed conflicts that poverty never imagined. The very abundance God provided threatens to destroy the peace God desires. Servants report these quarrels to their masters with increasing frequency. Harsh words are spoken, boundaries disputed, tempers flare in the desert heat. Other tribes watch these internal conflicts with interest, perhaps hoping to benefit from any permanent division between the wealthy kinsmen. Abram realizes that decisive action must be taken before irreparable damage occurs. Family unity matters more than financial advantage. Peace between brothers outweighs prosperity that comes at the cost of relationship. Love must find a way to resolve what logic alone cannot fix. The solution will require sacrifice from someone. Either both households must learn to share limited resources, or they must separate to find abundance in different locations. Neither option appeals to Abram's heart, but both seem preferable to ongoing conflict. Prayer becomes more urgent as the situation deteriorates. The God who called him from Ur, who protected him in Egypt, who blessed him with abundance, must surely have wisdom for this dilemma. Faith that faltered in Egypt now seeks renewal in this moment of family crisis. The answer, when it comes, will surprise everyone with its generosity and wisdom. But first, Abram must find the courage to act on love rather than self-interest, to demonstrate the kind of faith that puts relationships above riches. Lot's settlement in Sodom. Morning light illuminates the Jordan Valley as Abram leads Lot to the high ground overlooking their disputed territory. Below them stretches a vista of breathtaking beauty. The river winds like a silver ribbon through fertile plains, while cities gleam in the distance like jewels scattered across green cloth. Look around you, Abram says with quiet dignity, gesturing toward the panoramic view. Choose whichever direction appeals to you. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you prefer the right, I'll take the left. Let's separate so our families can live in peace. The offer reveals Abram's character in its most generous light. As the elder, he could claim first choice of the best land. As Lot's uncle and benefactor, he might demand deference to his preferences. Instead, he surrenders his rights for the sake of family harmony, trusting God to provide whatever portion remains. Lot's eyes survey the options with the calculating gaze of a businessman. To the west lie the hill countries of Canaan, beautiful but challenging, requiring hard work to make them productive. To the east spreads the Jordan Valley, lush, well-watered, obviously fertile, practically begging for settlement. The choice seems obvious from a purely practical standpoint. The Jordan Valley resembles the Garden of Eden in its natural abundance, blessed with rivers and rich soil that promise easy prosperity. Cities already established there offer opportunities for trade and cultural advancement. "I'll take the Jordan Valley," Lot announces, his decision made with swift certainty. The words carry no malice, but they reveal priorities that will soon bring unexpected consequences. He chooses based on immediate appearance rather than deeper wisdom, on material advantage rather than spiritual considerations. Abram accepts this choice with gracious silence, though his heart surely feels the sting of being left with the apparently inferior option. The hill country may offer less obvious wealth, but it will prove richer in ways that gold and silver cannot measure. The parting of ways unfolds with embraces and blessings, family love tempering the sadness of necessary separation. Lot gathers his household and possessions, his servants and flocks, preparing for the journey toward his chosen inheritance. Adventure calls to his ambitious spirit. As Lot's caravan moves toward the Jordan Valley, Abram watches from the heights until the dust clouds fade into the shimmering distance. Solitude settles around him like an old cloak, familiar but somehow heavier than before. The nephew who shared his journey from Ur now walks a different path. Lot's destination proves to be Sodom, the most prosperous city in the Jordan Valley. Its markets bustle with activity, its buildings rise in impressive displays of architecture, its culture offers sophistication unknown in nomadic camps. Everything suggests that Lot has chosen wisely, yet something darker lurks beneath Sodom's attractive surface. The city's prosperity has bred moral corruption, its sophistication has cultivated spiritual darkness. The very abundance that draws Lot like a magnet carries within it the seeds of destruction. The people of Sodom have grown rich through trade and agriculture, but their wealth has led them far from righteousness. They oppress the poor, ignore the needy, indulge in practices that would make angels weep. Their city may gleam like gold, but it stinks like sulfur in the nostrils of heaven. Lot settles his family near Sodom initially, perhaps intending to maintain some distance from the city's influence while benefiting from its economic opportunities. But proximity to temptation often leads to participation, and soon he finds himself living within Sodom's walls. The transition happens gradually, almost imperceptibly. First, he trades in Sodom's markets, then attends its festivals, finally establishes residence among its citizens. Each step seems reasonable in isolation, but together they form a path away from the values that once guided his choices. His wife and daughters adapt to city life with enthusiasm, enjoying its comforts and conveniences after years of nomadic existence. The tents and open skies of their former life seem crude and primitive compared to Sodom's urban sophistication. But comfort, bought at the price of righteousness, proves expensive beyond calculation. The city's moral atmosphere seeps into their hearts like poison, corrupting their values and compromising their integrity. They gain a city but risk losing their souls. Meanwhile, Abram remains in the hill country, dwelling in tents, maintaining the nomadic lifestyle that keeps his heart focused on eternal rather than temporal treasures. His apparent loss becomes his greatest gain, his willing sacrifice his richest blessing. The contrast between the two men's choices will soon become clear. Lot chose what looked best to human eyes but proved deadly to the human spirit. Abram accepted what seemed less desirable but carried within it the approval of heaven. This story whispers wisdom to every generation. Appearances deceive, prosperity tempts, and the path that leads to immediate gratification often ends in ultimate sorrow. The best choice is not always the obvious choice. God's Covenant Part 1. Silence wraps around Abram's tent like a gentle blanket as evening settles over the hill country of Canaan. The flocks have been gathered, the servants have completed their daily tasks, and peace reigns over the camp. Yet within Abram's heart, questions stir like restless winds in the desert. Lot's departure weighs heavily on his spirit, not just because of the loneliness it brings, but because of what it represents. The nephew who once shared his dreams of divine promise has chosen earthly prosperity over heavenly blessing. The family that journeyed together from Ur has divided, leaving Abram to wonder about the cost of following God's call. Years have passed since the voice first spoke in Ur, promising descendants as numerous as stars and a great nation from his lineage. Yet Sarai remains childless, her womb closed despite fervent prayers and faithful waiting. How can God fulfill promises of countless offspring when the basic requirement, a single child, seems impossible? The irony cuts deep. Lot, who received no specific divine promises, prospers with children and wealth in the fertile valley. Abram, the chosen recipient of heaven's favor, dwells childless among the hills, his inheritance seemingly limited to the dust beneath his feet. These thoughts swirl through his mind as darkness deepens over the land. The weight of divine calling sometimes feels heavier than blessing, especially when visible evidence of God's favor grows scarce. Faith demands trust when sight offers little encouragement. Then, like sunrise breaking through storm clouds, the word of the Lord comes to Abram in a vision. Not the faint whisper of wishful thinking, but the unmistakable voice of divine authority speaking directly to his troubled heart. "Do not be afraid, Abram." The voice begins with infinite tenderness. The words address his deepest fears. Fear that he has chosen wrongly, fear that God has forgotten his promises, fear that faith has led him into futility. "I am your shield," God continues, painting a picture of protection that no earthly army could provide. In a world where strength determines survival, where the weak fall prey to the powerful, this divine assurance offers security beyond human understanding. "Your very great reward," the promise concludes, suggesting riches that transcend gold and silver. Not merely compensation for faithful service, but the deep satisfaction that comes from walking in perfect alignment with divine purpose. Yet honesty compels Abram to voice the question that burns within his heart. "Sovereign Lord," he responds with respectful boldness, "what can you give me since I remain childless? The one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus." The response reveals both his humanity and his pain. Years of waiting have worn down his initial confidence. The promise of descendants seems to mock him daily as he watches his servant Eliezer manage household affairs with the efficiency of a natural heir. "A servant in my household will be my heir," Abram continues, his voice heavy with resignation. The words acknowledge reality as he sees it. God's promises might find fulfillment through adoption rather than natural birth, through legal arrangement rather than biological miracle. But God's response sweeps away such limited thinking with the force of divine creativity. "This man will not be your heir," the voice declares with gentle firmness. The solution Abram's practical mind has constructed crumbles before the superior wisdom of heaven. "A son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir," God promises, speaking life into dead situations, hope into desperate circumstances. The impossibility that has haunted Abram's prayers becomes the very foundation of divine demonstration. Then comes the moment that will echo through generations. God leads Abram outside his tent, away from the confining walls of human limitation, into the vast openness of star-filled night. "Look up at the sky," God commands with the authority of one who hung every light in place. "Count the stars, if indeed you can count them." Abram's eyes lift to the cosmic display above him. Countless points of light pierce the darkness, stretching beyond the reach of human vision. Each star represents divine power. Each constellation speaks of infinite creativity. "So shall your offspring be," God promises, connecting Abram's future to the very fabric of creation. Not just many descendants, but descendants beyond counting, as numerous as the stars that fill the heavens from horizon to horizon. The promise staggers the imagination while satisfying the heart. From a childless old man and his barren wife will come a multitude that mirrors the glory of the night sky. The impossible becomes inevitable when spoken by the voice that commands galaxies. Faith rises in Abram's heart like water from a deep well, pure and refreshing after long drought. The evidence of his senses, his age, Sarai's barrenness, the passing years, melts away before the evidence of God's character and power. Scripture records the profound simplicity of his response. Abram believed the Lord. No complex theology, no detailed understanding of how the promise would unfold. Simply trust in the one who spoke the stars into existence and now promises to multiply his offspring like them. This moment of faith becomes the foundation of all that follows. Not faith in circumstances which remain unchanged, but faith in the character of God which never wavers. Not trust in human ability, which has reached its limits, but trust in divine power, which knows no boundaries. The stars continue their ancient dance overhead as Abram returns to his tent, but something fundamental has shifted in his relationship with God. The promise has been renewed, the covenant confirmed, the future secured by divine decree. The War of Kings dawn brings disturbing news to Abram's camp in the form of breathless messengers, their clothes torn and dusty from desperate travel. The words they speak shatter the peaceful morning like stones thrown into still water. War has erupted in the Jordan Valley, and Lot has been captured. The conflict involves mighty kings whose names carry weight across the ancient world. Kedorlaomer of Elam leads a coalition of eastern rulers who have marched west to crush a rebellion among the city-states of the Jordan Valley. Sodom and Gomorrah, along with their allies, dared to throw off the yoke of tribute after 12 years of submission. The battle proved as swift as it was decisive. The eastern kings swept through the valley like a flood, overwhelming local defenses with superior numbers and military expertise. City after city fell before their advance, their treasures plundered, their people scattered or captured. Lot, who chose Sodom for its apparent security and prosperity, now finds himself a prisoner of war. The nephew who sought comfort in city walls discovers that human fortifications cannot protect against divine judgment, working through earthly armies. Abram's response reveals the warrior heart hidden beneath his shepherd's exterior. Despite their recent separation, despite Lot's choice of the better land, family loyalty burns stronger than personal grievance. Blood calls to blood, and love transcends past disappointments. The decision to pursue trained armies with a household force of shepherds and servants seems like madness to practical minds. Abram commands only 318 trained men born in his household, a tiny force against the combined might of 4 victorious kings and their professional soldiers. Yet sometimes the impossible becomes possible when ordinary courage meets divine favor. Abram's men may lack military experience, but they possess something more valuable: absolute loyalty to their master and trust in his God. Preparation for battle unfolds with careful planning and urgent prayer. Weapons must be gathered, strategies discussed, routes planned through unfamiliar territory. Every detail matters when pursuing enemies who hold every apparent advantage. The pursuit leads north toward Dan, where the retreating armies pause to divide their spoils and celebrate their victories. Confidence makes them careless, success breeds complacency. They camp without proper guards, assuming no force capable of threatening them exists in this region. Divine wisdom guides Abram's strategy as he divides his small force for a nighttime attack. Striking from multiple directions, his men create confusion that multiplies their effectiveness. In the darkness, noise and panic serve as weapons more powerful than swords. The battle erupts with savage intensity as Abram's household warriors fall upon the unsuspecting camp. Shouts of alarm shatter the night as soldiers scramble for weapons and armor. The carefully organized army becomes a mob of frightened men fleeing in all directions. Victory comes swiftly and completely. The mighty coalition that conquered the Jordan Valley crumbles before a force less than 1/10 its size. Divine intervention levels the battlefield, proving that God's favor outweighs human strength. Lot emerges from captivity shaken but unharmed, his family and possessions recovered along with the treasures of Sodom. The young man who chose earthly security learns that true safety comes only from walking in covenant with the Almighty. Other captives celebrate their unexpected liberation as Abram's men gather the scattered spoils of war. Gold and silver, weapons and livestock, all the wealth the eastern kings had plundered now lies available for the taking. But the most significant encounter awaits Abram on his journey home. Near Jerusalem, a mysterious figure appears: Melchizedek, king of Salem and priest of God Most High. This man combines royal and religious authority in ways that hint at divine appointment. Melchizedek brings bread and wine to refresh the victorious warriors, but his real gift lies in the blessing he pronounces. "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth," he declares with prophetic authority. The blessing continues with recognition of divine intervention in the recent victory. "And praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." These words confirm what Abram's heart already knows: the triumph belongs to God, not human strength. In response, Abram gives Melchizedek a tenth of all the recovered plunder. This tithe represents more than gratitude for blessing received. It acknowledges Melchizedek's spiritual authority and affirms the principle that all victory belongs ultimately to God. The encounter with Melchizedek transforms the meaning of military success. What began as a rescue mission becomes a spiritual milestone, a moment when heaven touches earth through human vessels. The mysterious priest king disappears as suddenly as he appeared, leaving only blessing in his wake. When the king of Sodom approaches to reclaim his people and possessions, Abram demonstrates integrity that surprises and humbles the pagan ruler. "Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself," the king offers, following normal customs of war. But Abram's response reveals character shaped by divine encounter. "With raised hand I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of a sandal." This refusal protects God's reputation and Abram's integrity. Let no one say that the king of Sodom made Abram rich. Let all who hear this story know that blessing comes from heaven alone, not from human benefactors or earthly alliances. The war that began with tragedy ends with triumph. The rescue that seemed impossible becomes testimony to divine power. Abram returns home with more than rescued family. He carries the memory of God's faithfulness in battle and the assurance that heaven's promises remain secure. Covenant, ritual, and divine promise. Darkness falls over the ancient land. Abraham stands alone, waiting for God to speak. The silence stretches long. Stars emerge one by one in the desert sky above. Earlier that day, God had spoken words that stirred something deep within Abraham's heart. "Do not fear, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward will be very great." But Abraham's response came from a place of honest pain. "Lord God, what will you give me? I remain childless. A servant born in my house will inherit everything I own." The ache in those words echoes across centuries. Here stands a man promised descendants like stars, yet his tent remains quiet. No children's laughter fills the evening air. No son calls his name. The weight of empty promises can crush even the strongest faith. God's reply comes gentle but firm. "This servant will not be your heir. A son from your own body will inherit all you have." Then comes the invitation that changes everything. "Look toward heaven, count the stars if you can number them, so shall your descendants be." Abraham lifts his eyes to the vast canopy above. Countless points of light pierce the darkness. Each star represents a life yet to be born. Each twinkle holds a future he cannot imagine. The promise feels impossible, yet something within him chooses to believe. Scripture tells us simply, he believed the Lord, and the Lord counted it to him as righteousness. But faith, even strong faith, seeks understanding. Abraham asks the question that lives in every human heart. "Lord God, how may I know that I will possess this land?" It's not doubt speaking. It's a soul yearning for confirmation of what seems beyond belief. God's answer comes through symbols older than words themselves. "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." Abraham gathers each animal carefully. This is no ordinary sacrifice. Something profound is about to unfold. With practiced hands, Abraham takes each larger animal and cuts it in two. He places the halves opposite each other, creating a pathway between them. The smaller birds remain whole. Blood soaks into the earth. The scene looks like something from a primitive ritual, yet divine purpose moves through every detail. Ancient covenant-making followed patterns lost to modern minds. When two parties made binding agreements, they would walk together between the pieces of sacrificed animals. The message was stark. May this happen to the one who breaks this covenant. Both parties shared the risk, both committed to the terms. As sunset approaches, birds of prey descend upon the carcasses. Abraham drives them away again and again. The symbolism runs deep. Evil forces always seek to devour God's promises. Faith requires constant vigilance. The enemy never sleeps. When the sun finally disappears, a deep sleep falls upon Abraham. But this is no ordinary rest. Thick and dreadful darkness settles over him. In this supernatural state, God speaks words that will echo through generations. "Know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs. They will be servants there and afflicted for 400 years. But I will judge the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. The future unfolds in divine revelation, slavery in Egypt, oppression and suffering. Yet deliverance will come. The promise includes both hardship and rescue. God's plans move through centuries, not decades. More words flow from the divine lips. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age, and they shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Even judgment has its timing. God waits for wickedness to reach its full measure before acting. Mercy and justice dance together in ways human minds can barely grasp. Then comes the moment that transforms covenant into certainty. When complete darkness covers the land, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch pass between the pieces. Abraham watches in wonder as God alone walks the covenant path. No human footsteps join the divine procession. The meaning staggers the heart. In typical covenants, both parties risked everything. Here, God alone bears the risk. If this promise fails, may God himself be torn like these animals. The Almighty stakes his very existence on keeping his word to Abraham. The torch disappears into darkness. The fire pot's smoke drifts away on desert winds. But the covenant remains forever. Cut in blood, sealed in mystery, guaranteed by God himself. Abraham awakens changed. The stars still shine above, but now they carry different meaning. Each one represents a child yet to be born. Each twinkle holds a promise backed by divine sacrifice. The impossible has become inevitable. Years will pass before Isaac's birth. Decades will unfold before the promise begins its full flowering. But tonight, in this place between the pieces, eternity has touched time. A covenant has been cut that will outlast kingdoms and empires. The ancient ritual speaks across millennia. When God makes a promise, he stakes everything on keeping it. When divine love commits to human hearts, nothing in heaven or earth can break that bond. The smoking fire pot and flaming torch have walked between the pieces. The covenant stands forever. Sarai's doubt and Hagar's introduction. 10 years have passed since God's promise echoed under starlit skies. 10 years of waiting. 10 years of hoping. 10 years of watching Sarai's face grow more shadowed with each passing moon. The covenant burns bright in Abraham's memory, but daily life carries different weights. Sarai moves through their tent with quiet efficiency. Her hands stay busy, grinding grain, weaving cloth, directing servants, but her eyes hold depths of pain that words cannot touch. She is 75 years old. Her body has never carried life. The monthly reminder of barrenness has become a familiar enemy. The promise haunts her differently than it does Abraham. He heard God's voice directly. Divine words fell upon his ears like rain on thirsty ground. But Sarai received the promise secondhand. Hope filtered through her husband's testimony. Faith becomes harder when it arrives through another's experience. She watches other women in neighboring camps, sees their children playing among the tents, hears their laughter, their gentle scolding, their bedtime songs. Each sound cuts deeper than the last. The promise of descendants like stars feels cruel when her own womb remains sealed shut. Cultural pressure adds weight to personal sorrow. In this ancient world, a woman's worth often measured itself in children produced. A barren wife brought shame not just to herself, but to her husband's entire household. Sarai carries this burden like stones in her heart. Yet within Sarai's household walks a young Egyptian woman whose presence offers both solution and temptation. Hagar came with them from Egypt years before, probably a gift from Pharaoh when Abraham's deception was discovered. She is young, strong, fertile. Everything Sarai feels she is not. The idea forms slowly in Sarai's mind. Ancient customs provided ways around barrenness. A wife could give her maidservant to her husband. Any children born would legally belong to the wife. It was accepted practice, even expected in some circles. But knowing something is culturally acceptable doesn't make it emotionally easy. Sarai struggles with thoughts she never expected to entertain. To hand her husband to another woman, even temporarily, even for practical purposes, tears at something deep within her soul. Abraham remains faithful to God's promise, but he also loves his wife. He sees her pain, watches her grow more desperate with each passing season. When she finally approaches him with her proposal, he faces an impossible choice. "The Lord has prevented me from bearing children," Sarai says, words heavy with resignation. Go in to my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. The phrase sounds clinical, but the heart behind it bleeds with hope and heartbreak mixed together. This moment reveals the beautiful complexity of human faith. Sarai believes God's promise enough to act. She trusts that Abraham will indeed have descendants, but she assumes she cannot be part of that promise's fulfillment. Her faith is real but incomplete. Abraham finds himself caught between divine promise and human love. God spoke of a son from his own body, but specified no details about the mother. Perhaps this is how the promise will unfold. Perhaps Sarai's plan aligns with heaven's purposes. The reasoning sounds logical, even spiritual. But logic and God's plans don't always intersect where human minds expect them to. Divine timing operates on different schedules than human desperation. God's methods often surprise those who think they understand his intentions. Hagar enters this story not as a villain, but as a victim of circumstance. She has no choice in what happens next. Ancient law gives maidservants no voice in such decisions. Her body becomes a tool for others' hopes, her future shaped by desires she never expressed. Yet even in this complex situation, God sees Hagar. The Egyptian girl matters to heaven. Her tears count. Her fears register in divine consciousness. She is not merely a means to someone else's end, but a person with her own relationship to the Almighty. The arrangement proceeds with all the emotional complications one might expect. Hagar conceives quickly. Life stirs within her body, the life Sarai has longed to carry for decades. Joy and bitterness intertwine in ways that poison the household's peace. Pregnancy changes Hagar's perspective on her mistress. The text tells us simply that when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. Power dynamics shift when the barren woman depends on the fertile servant. Hagar's scorn cuts deep into Sarai's already wounded heart. Sarai's response reveals the depth of her pain. "May the wrong done to me be on you," she tells Abraham. "I gave my servant to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me." The blame spreads like spilled oil. Sarai blames Abraham. Abraham effectively abandons Hagar to Sarai's harsh treatment. Everyone suffers. No one finds the peace they sought. Human attempts to fulfill divine promises often create more problems than they solve. When we run ahead of God's timing, even with good intentions, complications multiply. Sarai's plan made sense by human standards. It solved practical problems, but it couldn't address the deeper issue of trust. The stage is set for drama that will echo through generations. Two pregnant women, one by divine promise, one by human scheming, will soon share the same household. Their sons will carry forward both blessing and tension. Faith and flesh prepare for collision. Ishmael is born. The wilderness stretches endlessly in every direction. Hot sand shifts beneath Hagar's feet as she stumbles forward, driven by desperation and tears. Behind her lies the only home she has known for years. Ahead waits uncertainty, danger, perhaps death. But anything feels better than Sarai's harsh treatment. Pregnancy makes the journey harder. Life grows within her belly, Abraham's child, the first fruit of his body. Yet this blessing has become her curse. Sarai's jealousy burns hotter than the desert sun. Each day brings new cruelties, fresh humiliations. Finally, Hagar can bear no more. She flees into the wilderness toward Egypt, her homeland. Perhaps her people will welcome her. Perhaps she can raise this child far from the tensions that poison Abraham's camp. The hope seems thin, but it's all she has left. Desert travel tests even experienced travelers. For a pregnant servant girl alone, it borders on suicide. Water runs low. The sun beats mercilessly overhead. Her feet blister and crack. Exhaustion weighs heavy on her shoulders. Yet she pushes forward, driven by pain greater than physical discomfort. Near a spring on the road to Egypt, strength finally fails her. She stops beside the water, overwhelmed by the impossibility of her situation. Where can she go? What future awaits her child? The questions have no answers she can see. Then comes the voice that changes everything. "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" The words carry authority mixed with gentleness. Someone has found her in this lonely place. She looks up to see a figure that both comforts and awes her. An angel of the Lord stands before her, God's own messenger in human form. In her darkest moment, heaven has noticed her plight. She is not as alone as she believed. "I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai," she answers honestly. No point in deception here. This being clearly knows more than he asks. The angel's response surprises her. Return to your mistress and submit to her. The command asks her to do the very thing she fled to avoid. Return to harsh treatment. Submit to jealous cruelty. Accept a subordinate position in the household's complex dynamics. But the command comes with promise. I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. The same language God used with Abraham now applies to her unborn child. This pregnancy carries significance beyond household politics. More promises flow like water from the spring beside them. Behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. The name means God hears. Even in her pain, even in her servant status, heaven pays attention. The angel describes her son's future with words both promising and troubling. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him, and he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen. Freedom and conflict will mark his path. He will bow to no one, but will find peace with few. These prophecies stretch far beyond one woman's immediate crisis. Nations will rise from this child's lineage. Peoples yet unborn will trace their heritage to this moment beside a desert spring. Hagar carries more than a baby. She bears the future in her womb. The encounter transforms her understanding of herself and her situation. She is not forgotten. God sees her tears, hears her cries, knows her name. The realization moves her to worship. You are a God of seeing, she declares, giving the Lord a name born from personal experience. She calls the well Bir Lahai Roy, the well of the living one who sees me. The place becomes a landmark of divine compassion. Generations will remember that God notices the forgotten, hears the voiceless, sees those others overlook. Hagar returns to Abraham's household changed. The harsh treatment continues, but she endures it differently now. She carries promises. Her son will be great. His descendants will multiply beyond counting. The present suffering has eternal significance. When labor comes, she brings forth the child as prophesied. Abraham names him Ishmael. God hears. The old patriarch is 86 years old when his first son draws breath. After decades of waiting, he finally holds a child of his own flesh. The birth brings joy mixed with complexity. Abraham loves this boy fiercely. Ishmael grows strong and quick under his father's delighted gaze. For 13 years, he is Abraham's only son, the apparent heir to all the promises. But divine purposes often work through multiple tracks simultaneously. Ishmael's birth fulfills part of God's word to Abraham, a son from his own body. Yet it is not the complete fulfillment. Sarah still waits for her promised child. The covenant has more chapters yet to unfold. During these 13 years, God remains silent. No visions come, no promises are renewed. Abraham raises Ishmael, grows older, perhaps wonders if this is how the covenant will work itself out. The boy thrives, learns the ways of the desert, shows every sign of becoming a worthy heir. Yet silence from heaven doesn't mean absence. God is working even when his voice cannot be heard. Plans are developing that will surprise everyone involved. The stage is being set for promises yet to be fulfilled. Hagar watches her son grow with pride and protectiveness. She remembers the angel's words beside the desert spring. This child is marked by God, noticed by heaven, destined for greatness. Whatever complexities lie ahead, Ishmael has divine backing. The well Bir Lahai Roy stands as testimony to God's character. He sees the desperate. He hears the afflicted. He notices those society considers expendable. Even when human plans create complications, divine love finds ways to bless those caught in the aftermath. 13 years of relative peace settle over Abraham's household. Father delights in son. Mother protects her child's interests. The promised heir grows strong under desert skies. But change approaches like distant thunder. The covenant has more surprises in store. Covenant of circumcision. 13 years of silence end with divine footsteps. Abraham, now 99 years old, encounters the voice that has shaped his entire adult life. Time has etched lines deep into his face. His beard shows silver white in morning light. Yet when God speaks, those ancient promises stir fresh hope in aging bones. I am God Almighty, the Lord declares, using a name that speaks of unlimited power. Walk before me and be blameless. The command carries both invitation and requirement. Divine relationship demands integrity, wholeness, complete devotion. What follows transforms everything Abraham thought he understood about his identity and calling. I will make my covenant between me and you, and will multiply you greatly. The promise expands beyond anything previously revealed. This is not merely about descendants, it's about nations, kings, eternal purposes. Then comes the moment that splits history in two. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. The name change carries profound significance. Abram means exalted father. Abraham means father of many nations. Identity shifts to match destiny. The covenant establishes itself as everlasting. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you. This transcends temporary agreements. This is permanent, eternal, unbreakable. Land comes with the covenant. I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. The promise includes geography, specific territory marked by divine intention, but covenant demands response. God requires a sign, a mark that will identify his people throughout history. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. The requirement extends beyond Abraham himself. You shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised. Every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring, both he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall surely be circumcised. The command includes consequences. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Participation requires commitment. Half-hearted obedience has no place in divine relationships. Sarai receives her own transformation. As for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. Like her husband, her identity changes to match her destiny. Sarah means princess, fitting for one who will mother nations. The promise focuses on Sarah in ways that must have shocked Abraham. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her. After decades of barrenness, divine intervention will make her fruitful. Abraham's response reveals his human heart. He falls on his face in worship, but questions arise within his mind. Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? The physical impossibility staggers even faith-trained imagination. His thoughts turn to Ishmael, the son he has loved for 13 years. Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. The cry comes from paternal affection. This boy has been his joy, his hope, his apparent heir. Surely God's plans include him. Divine response comes with both comfort and clarification. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. Ishmael's future is secure. God's blessing extends to him as well. But the covenant line flows through Sarah's child. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. The name means laughter, appropriate for a child whose birth will bring joy after decades of waiting. The specificity astounds, not just sometime or eventually, but at this time next year. Divine precision sets human hope on firm foundation. The impossible has divine timetable. Abraham responds with immediate obedience. That very day, he takes every male in his household, himself, Ishmael, servants, slaves, and circumcises them according to God's command. No delay, no hesitation. When God speaks, action follows. The physical pain must have been considerable. 99-year-old flesh does not heal quickly, yet Abraham bears it gladly. This mark in his body represents eternal covenant. The temporary discomfort pales beside everlasting significance. Ishmael, now 13, receives the mark alongside his father. The boy participates in covenant even though he is not its primary heir. God's grace extends beyond the main line of promise. Even those on the edges of divine purpose receive divine attention. The household transformation is complete. New names reflect new identities. Fresh promises energize aging hearts. Physical marks testify to spiritual realities. Everything has changed, yet everything builds on what came before. From this day forward, every male child born to Abraham's lineage will bear the covenant sign. 8 days after birth, each boy will be marked as belonging to God's chosen people. The practice will continue through millennia, linking generations to this moment of divine encounter. The silence has ended. God has spoken again, but now the waiting takes on different character. Next year, at this very time, Sarah will hold her promised son. The impossible is about to become inevitable. Visitors at Mamre heat shimmers across the plain near Hebron. Abraham sits in the shade of his tent during the hottest part of the day, the time when wise desert dwellers rest until temperatures cool. His eyes scan the horizon, a habit developed over decades of nomadic life. Movement in any direction could mean visitors, traders, or trouble. 3 figures appear in the distance, walking toward his camp. Strangers in the wilderness always present both opportunity and risk. They might bring news from distant lands, trade goods, or dangerous intentions. But Abraham's heart, shaped by years of encountering the divine, recognizes something different about these approaching men. He rises quickly and runs to meet them. His aged body moves with surprising urgency. Something within him stirs, a recognition beyond physical sight. These are no ordinary travelers. He bows deeply before them, showing the utmost respect. "My lord," he says, addressing what appears to be their leader, "if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree." The invitation flows from ancient hospitality traditions, but carries unusual intensity. His offer expands with generous enthusiasm. "Let me bring a morsel of bread that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant." The humble language masks elaborate preparations about to unfold. The visitors accept his invitation with simple grace. "Do as you have said." Their agreement unleashes a flurry of activity throughout Abraham's household. Abraham hurries to Sarah's tent. "Quick! 3 seahs of fine flour. Knead it and make cakes." 3 seahs equals approximately 20 quarts of flour, enough to feed a small army, not just 3 travelers. Nothing about this meal will be ordinary. He runs to his herd and selects a calf, tender and good, the choicest meat for these mysterious guests. He gives it to a young man who prepares it with practiced skill. The smell of roasting meat soon fills the air around the encampment. Meanwhile, Abraham gathers curds and milk to complement the feast. Every detail receives careful attention. These visitors will receive the finest hospitality his household can provide. He serves them personally, standing nearby as they eat beneath the shade of the trees. As the meal progresses, one visitor asks a question that changes everything. "Where is Sarah, your wife?" The inquiry seems innocent enough, but carries profound implications. How does this stranger know Sarah's name? How does he know Abraham even has a wife? "She is in the tent," Abraham replies, his awareness heightening. This is clearly no ordinary encounter. What follows shatters the boundaries of human possibility. "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." The promise lands like thunder in a clear sky. Sarah, now 89 years old, long past any natural hope of childbearing, will become a mother. Sarah listens from inside the tent, her ear pressed close to the fabric. She hears every word of this incredible prediction. Her response is immediate and involuntary. She laughs. Not the laughter of joy, but the bitter amusement of impossibility. Her body knows its limitations. Her womb has been barren for decades. The promise sounds absurd. The visitor's response reveals his true identity. Why did Sarah laugh and say, "Shall I indeed give birth now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son." The Lord himself sits beneath Abraham's trees. The creator of the universe has accepted Abraham's hospitality. Divine presence fills the ordinary moment with extraordinary significance. No wonder Abraham sensed something special about these visitors. Fear grips Sarah as she realizes the implications. She denies her laughter, saying, "I did not laugh." The lie springs from terror rather than deception. To laugh at God's promise feels like blasphemy, even when that laughter comes from decades of disappointment. But the Lord's response carries gentle firmness rather than condemnation. "No, but you did laugh." The acknowledgement isn't accusation, it's understanding. God knows human hearts. He comprehends the bitter pain behind Sarah's laughter. The scene reveals profound truths about divine character. God doesn't demand perfection before fulfilling promises. Sarah's doubt doesn't disqualify her from blessing. Her laughter of disbelief will become laughter of joy when Isaac arrives. Even skeptical hearts can receive divine grace. The meal continues with undercurrents of recognition flowing between host and guests. Abraham serves the creator of heaven and earth with bread and meat. The ordinary elements of hospitality become sacramental when touched by divine presence. As the visitors prepare to leave, they carry Abraham's future with them. The promise has been spoken, the time has been set. About this time next year echoes in the air like a distant bell. The impossible pregnancy will begin soon. Sarah retreats deeper into her tent, mind spinning with possibilities she had buried years ago. Could it really happen? Could her aged body carry life? Could decades of barrenness end in fertility? The questions have no comfortable answers. Abraham watches his guests depart with mixed emotions. Joy at the promise mingles with concern for its implications. A child at 100 years old will bring both blessing and challenge. Nothing about this divine intervention will be simple. The encounter leaves its mark on everything. The trees that provided shade become witnesses to divine visitation. The place where bread was broken becomes sacred ground. Ordinary hospitality has hosted extraordinary grace. Time now moves toward fulfillment. The promise carries its own momentum. Sarah's laughter of disbelief will transform into laughter of delight. The God who visits humble tents keeps the promises he makes beneath their shade. 9 months stretch ahead. 9 months for faith to overcome doubt, for possibility to become reality, for divine power to demonstrate that nothing is too hard for the Lord. Bargaining for Sodom. The 3 visitors rise from their meal beneath Abraham's trees. 2 turn toward Sodom, but the 3rd remains with Abraham. Divine conversation continues as evening approaches. What unfolds next reveals the heart of God and the boldness of friendship with the Almighty. Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? The Lord muses, speaking as much to himself as to his faithful servant. The question reveals stunning intimacy. God chooses to share his plans with this desert wanderer rather than act in secret. The reasoning behind this transparency cuts deep into divine character. Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have chosen him, that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice. Divine friendship comes with divine responsibility. Abraham's calling extends beyond personal blessing to global influence. The nations will find blessing through his lineage, but that blessing carries the weight of righteousness and justice. Character matters in covenant relationships. Then comes the revelation that stops Abraham's heart. Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. And if not, I will know. The words carry judicial weight. Divine investigation precedes divine judgment. Even God, who knows all things, follows patterns of justice that satisfy both mercy and righteousness. The city's wickedness has reached heaven's attention, but verification will come through personal examination. The 2 angels depart for Sodom, leaving Abraham alone with the Lord. What happens next demonstrates courage that borders on audacity. Abraham knows Lot lives in Sodom with his family. His nephew's life hangs in the balance of divine judgment. Love compels him to speak. Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? The question challenges divine justice while acknowledging divine authority. Abraham approaches the throne of judgment with reverent boldness. His argument gains momentum as it develops. Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be that from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? The logic is impeccable. Divine justice demands protection for the innocent. If righteous people live in Sodom, surely they deserve preservation. Abraham appeals to God's own character as the foundation for his request. The Lord's response reveals divine grace. If I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake. The entire city can be saved for the sake of 50 good people. Mercy triumphs over judgment when righteousness intercedes. But Abraham's heart knows Sodom's condition. 50 righteous people might be too many to hope for. So he presses further, approaching the divine throne with increasing boldness. Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? The humble language masks audacious faith. Abraham acknowledges his lowly status while exercising remarkable authority in divine conversation. Dust and ashes dare to negotiate with the creator of the universe. Again, the Lord agrees. I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. Divine patience matches human persistence. Each request receives gracious consideration. Abraham continues his careful descent down the numerical ladder. Suppose 40 are found there? The answer comes without hesitation. For the sake of 40, I will not do it. Divine mercy keeps pace with human intercession. The negotiation continues with gathering intensity. Suppose 30 are found there? The response remains consistent. I will not do it if I find 30 there. God's willingness to spare the city diminishes with each number, but never disappears entirely. Abraham's requests grow bolder as divine patience proves limitless. Suppose 20 are found there. The answer echoes previous responses. For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. Even a small remnant of righteousness can preserve an entire city. Finally, Abraham reaches what feels like the limit of divine and human patience. Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak again but this once. Suppose 10 are found there? The number seems impossibly small for a great city, yet still Abraham dares to ask. The Lord's final answer reveals the depths of divine mercy. For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. 10 righteous people, barely a single extended family, could save thousands of lives. Divine justice bends toward mercy whenever possible. The conversation ends with mutual understanding. Abraham has pushed as far as he dares. The Lord has revealed mercy beyond human expectation. Divine judgment will proceed, but only after every possibility for preservation has been explored. The Lord departs, leaving Abraham to contemplate what has just occurred. He has stood in the presence of divine justice and found it tempered by infinite mercy. The God who judges nations listens to human intercession. The creator of heaven and earth considers the appeals of dust and ashes. But deeper questions linger in Abraham's mind. Will even 10 righteous people be found in Sodom? Can his nephew Lot and his family provide the righteousness necessary for the city's preservation? The morning will bring answers, but tonight brings only prayer and hope. The encounter reveals profound truths about divine character. God desires to save rather than destroy. Divine judgment serves righteousness, not vengeance. Even the worst cities can be spared if adequate righteousness dwells within their walls. Abraham returns to his tent changed by the experience. He has discovered that friendship with God includes the privilege of intercession. Human prayer can influence divine action. Righteous boldness finds welcome at heaven's throne. The night stretches long as Abraham wrestles with implications he cannot fully grasp. Somewhere in the distance, Sodom sleeps unaware that its fate hangs in the balance of divine investigation. Morning approaches with the weight of eternal consequences. Destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Evening settles over Sodom as 2 figures approach the city gates. To casual observers, they appear to be ordinary travelers seeking shelter for the night. But these are the same divine messengers who shared bread with Abraham. They carry heaven's mission of investigation and, if necessary, judgment. Lot sits at the city gate as darkness falls. This location marks him as a man of some standing in Sodom. The gate serves as the place where business is conducted and justice administered. When he sees the strangers, something within him recognizes their need for protection. Rising quickly, he bows before them with deep respect. My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise up early and go on your way. His urgency carries undertones of desperation. He knows what happens to vulnerable travelers in Sodom after dark. The visitors initially decline his invitation. No, we will spend night in the town square. Their response tests both Lot's persistence and the city's character. What happens to strangers who sleep in Sodom's streets will reveal the city's true nature. Lot's insistence grows more urgent. He presses them strongly until they finally agree to come to his house. His relief is palpable. These men will be safe under his roof, protected by the ancient laws of hospitality that still hold meaning for him. He prepares a feast for them, baking unleavened bread and serving a full meal. The simple fare contrasts sharply with Abraham's elaborate hospitality, but carries the same spirit of generous welcome. Lot's household shows the last flickers of righteousness in a city grown dark. But before the visitors can retire for the night, disaster strikes. The men of Sodom, both young and old, surround Lot's house. Their intentions are clear and horrifying. They call out to Lot with demands that reveal the depth of their depravity. "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them." The euphemism barely masks their violent intent. These are not casual requests, but aggressive demands from a mob drunk on its own wickedness. Lot steps outside, closing the door behind him to protect his guests. What he does next reveals both admirable loyalty and tragic moral confusion. He pleads with the crowd, calling them brothers in a desperate attempt to appeal to whatever humanity might remain in their hearts. "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly." His words fall on deaf ears, hardened by years of unchecked sin. The crowd's response grows more threatening. They accuse him of judging them, of setting himself above them as a moral authority. "This fellow came to sojourn, and he has become the judge," they shout. "Now we will deal worse with you than with them." The mob turns against Lot himself, pressing forward to break down his door and seize both him and his guests. The angels act swiftly to rescue their host. They pull Lot back inside and strike the men outside with blindness. The attackers grope helplessly in the darkness, unable to find the door they had been so determined to break down. Divine intervention saves the righteous while demonstrating heaven's power over evil. The angel's true identity now becomes clear to Lot. These are no ordinary men, but messengers of the Most High. Their words carry the weight of divine judgment. "Do you have anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city? Bring them out of the place, for we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." Terror grips Lot's heart. The judgment Abraham had bargained to prevent is now inevitable. Sodom's wickedness has reached its full measure. Even 10 righteous people cannot be found within its walls. Divine patience has reached its limit. Lot rushes to warn his sons-in-law, and the men engage to marry his daughters. "Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city." But his words sound like jokes to them. They have lived in Sodom so long that divine judgment seems impossible. Their laughter seals their doom. Dawn breaks over the doomed city as the angels urge greater haste. "Up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city." Time is running out. Divine judgment waits only for the righteous to escape. But Lot hesitates. Years of life in Sodom have created roots difficult to tear up. His possessions, his position, his familiar surroundings all pull at his heart. The angels must literally seize him, his wife, and his daughters by the hands and drag them from the city. The Lord, being merciful to him, explains this divine intervention. Even Lot's weak faith receives protection. God's mercy extends to the spiritually confused when their hearts retain some measure of righteousness. Outside the city, one angel gives final instructions. "Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the hills, lest you be swept away." The command is clear and urgent. Safety lies only in complete separation from the doomed cities. Lot requests permission to flee to the small city of Zoar instead of the distant hills. The angel grants this mercy, but warns that destruction cannot be delayed much longer. "Hurry, escape there, for I can do nothing until you arrive there." The sun rises fully as Lot reaches Zoar's safety. Then divine judgment falls with terrible swiftness. The Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. The description suggests both natural disaster and supernatural intervention combined in perfect judgment. The destruction is complete and horrifying. He overthrew those cities, and all the valley, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. Nothing survives the divine wrath. The fertile plain becomes a smoking wasteland in moments. Lot's wife, despite the angel's clear warning, looks back toward the city she is leaving. Perhaps she thinks of possessions left behind, friends who chose to stay, or simply cannot resist one final glimpse of her former home. The backward glance becomes her final act. She becomes a pillar of salt, a monument to the danger of clinging to condemned things. Abraham rises early that morning and looks toward Sodom from his distant camp. Where once fertile cities dotted the plain, now only smoke rises like the smoke of a furnace. His intercession could not save the cities, but it did rescue his nephew. Divine mercy preserved the righteous even when judgment fell on the wicked. The contrast between the two men becomes stark in the aftermath. Abraham remained separate from worldly corruption and maintained his relationship with God. Lot chose to live among the wicked and nearly perished with them. Both men faced the same divine judgment, but their different choices led to vastly different outcomes. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah echoes through history as a warning about divine justice. God's patience has limits. Wickedness that continues unchecked will eventually face divine intervention. Yet even in judgment, mercy finds ways to preserve the righteous. Lot survives to continue his troubled story, but he is changed forever. The man who once chose the best land for himself now lives as a refugee. His possessions are gone, his wife is dead, his social position has vanished, yet he retains his life and his daughters. Divine mercy has preserved what truly matters. The smoking ruins become a perpetual reminder that human choices have eternal consequences. The cities that seemed so prosperous and permanent have vanished in a single morning. Only those who maintained some connection to righteousness found escape from the consuming fire. Abraham and Abimelech. The smoking ruins of Sodom fade behind Abraham as he moves his household south toward the Negeb. The destruction has shaken something deep within him. Divine judgment, even when deserved, leaves scars on hearts that witness it. He seeks distance from the devastation, space to process what he has seen. His journey brings him between Kadesh and Shur to the land of the Philistines. Here he encounters Abimelech, king of Gerar, a man who will teach him unexpected lessons about integrity and the reach of divine protection. But first, Abraham repeats a pattern that should have been buried with the ashes of Sodom. Fear grips his heart as he surveys this new land and its people. Old habits die hard, even for men who walk with God. The same deception that brought trouble in Egypt now resurfaces in Philistine territory. "She is my sister," Abraham tells those who ask about Sarah. The half-truth carries the same potential for disaster as before. Sarah is indeed his half-sister, but she is primarily his wife. The deception aims to protect his life, but endangers her honor and their marriage. What follows reveals how deeply human weakness can complicate divine purposes. Abimelech, seeing Sarah's beauty despite her advanced age, takes her into his household. The woman promised to bear Isaac within the year becomes part of a pagan king's harem. The covenant hangs in the balance of human folly. But God intervenes with swift and unmistakable action. He comes to Abimelech in a dream, speaking words that freeze the king's blood. "Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife." The divine threat is immediate and absolute. Death awaits those who interfere with God's covenant purposes, even unknowingly. Sarah's protection comes from heaven itself, ensuring that Isaac's birth will proceed according to divine plan. Abimelech's response reveals surprising integrity. "Lord, will you kill an innocent people? Did he not himself say to me, 'She is my sister'? And she herself said, 'He is my brother.' In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I have done this." The pagan king's defense shows more honesty than Abraham's deception. Abimelech acted in good faith based on false information. His moral confusion comes from external lies, not internal corruption. The contrast with Abraham's duplicity is stark and uncomfortable. God acknowledges the king's innocence while maintaining the urgency of correction. "Yes, I know that you have done this in the integrity of your heart, and it was I who kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her." Divine intervention has protected both Sarah's purity and Abimelech's soul. God's sovereignty works even through human deception to preserve his purposes. The king's integrity finds divine recognition and protection. The divine command comes with clear expectations. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours." The word prophet surprises with its generosity. Despite his deception, Abraham retains his calling and authority. Divine grace covers human weakness without excusing it. The man who lied still carries the power to intercede for others. Abimelech rises early the next morning, shaken by his divine encounter. He calls all his servants and tells them everything that has happened. Fear falls upon the entire household as they realize how close they have come to divine judgment. The king summons Abraham with words that sting with justified reproach. "What have you done to us, and how have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not to be done." The accusation cuts deep because it rings true. Abraham's deception has endangered innocent people. His attempt to protect himself has threatened others with divine judgment. The behavior expected from pagans has been exhibited by God's chosen servant. Abimelech presses further, demanding explanation. "What did you see that you did this thing?" The question exposes the weakness of Abraham's reasoning. What threat justified such deception? What danger required such duplicity? Abraham's answer reveals the depth of his fear and the poverty of his trust. "I did it because I thought, there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife." He assumed the worst about these people without evidence, projecting his own moral weakness onto them. His justification continues with technical truth that masks deeper deception. "Besides, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife." The half-truth served as full deception, manipulating facts to avoid consequences. Most revealing is Abraham's admission that this deception represents a pattern, not an isolated incident. "And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, 'This is the kindness you must do me. At every place to which we come, say of me, he is my brother.'" The confession stuns with its implications. Abraham has been living a lie for decades, teaching his wife to participate in ongoing deception. The man called to bless the nations has been deceiving them instead. The contrast between calling and conduct could not be starker. Yet Abimelech's response demonstrates grace that shames Abraham's gracelessness. The king not only returns Sarah unharmed, but showers Abraham with gifts. "Behold, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you." The injured party offers generous hospitality to the one who wronged him. To Sarah, Abimelech gives 1,000 pieces of silver, saying, "It is your vindication before all who are with you, and before everyone you are cleared." The gift publicly declares her innocence and honors her dignity. The pagan king shows more concern for her reputation than her husband did. Abraham, despite his deception, fulfills his prophetic role. He prays for Abimelech, and God heals the king, his wife, and his female servants so they can bear children again. Divine judgment lifts when righteousness is restored. The intercessor's prayer proves effective despite his moral failure. The entire episode reveals uncomfortable truths about faith and character. God's chosen servants remain capable of serious moral failure. Divine purposes can survive human weakness, but they proceed despite it, not because of it. Pagans sometimes show more integrity than believers, yet grace covers all. Abraham's deception does not disqualify him from covenant blessing. Abimelech's integrity receives divine recognition and protection. Sarah's honor is preserved despite her husband's cowardice. God's purposes advance even through human folly. The encounter leaves Abraham chastened but not abandoned. He has seen divine patience with his weakness and pagan strength in unexpected places. The promised son will arrive on schedule, but the lesson about integrity will echo through the remaining chapters of his story. Isaac is born. The promise hangs in the air like morning mist over the desert. At this time next year, Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. Divine words spoken beneath the oaks of Mamre now approach their fulfillment. Time moves toward miracle with inexorable purpose. Sarah's body shows no signs of the impossible promise. At 90 years old, her womb has been barren for decades. The monthly reminders of fertility ceased long ago. Yet something stirs within her that defies natural explanation. Divine power begins its gentle work where human possibility has ended. Abraham watches his wife with new eyes. The woman who laughed at Angel's words now carries the seed of promise within her aging frame. Each day brings fresh wonder. Each morning reveals God's faithful power working quietly within ordinary flesh. The pregnancy progresses with all the normal discomforts magnified by advanced age. Sarah's body protests this unexpected burden. Her joints ache, her energy flags. Yet joy mingles with physical distress. The impossible is becoming undeniably real. Word spreads through the camp as Sarah's condition becomes apparent. Servants whisper in amazement. Neighboring nomads hear the news with wonder. A 90-year-old woman carrying a child staggers human imagination. Only divine intervention can explain such a thing. Sarah herself marvels at what God has done within her. The barren womb that brought decades of shame now swells with promised life. The empty arms that ached for children prepare to hold the child of covenant. Laughter of disbelief transforms into laughter of approaching joy. Abraham, now 100 years old, prepares for fatherhood with trembling hands and overflowing heart. He has waited 25 years since the first promise. He has endured Sarah's barrenness, tried Hagar's fertility, and watched Ishmael grow. Now the covenant child approaches birth. The labor comes with intensity that tests Sarah's aged strength. But divine power that initiated this pregnancy sustains it through completion. The child who was impossible to conceive proves equally determined to be born. Promise becomes flesh in Sarah's exhausted arms. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. The simple words carry profound weight. Divine faithfulness has triumphed over human impossibility. God's word has proven more reliable than natural limitations. Isaac draws his first breath in a world that has waited for his arrival. His cry announces that the impossible has happened. The child of promise, the heir of covenant, the beginning of countless descendants, has finally come. Abraham holds his son with hands that shake with emotion. This tiny life represents everything God has promised. Through this child will come the blessing for all nations. In these small fingers lies the future of divine purpose. The weight of promise settles into Abraham's aging arms. Sarah's laughter fills the tent with joy unbounded. God has made laughter for me, she declares. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. The bitter laughter of disbelief has become the sweet laughter of fulfillment. Divine grace has transformed skepticism into celebration. Her wonder continues to overflow in words of praise. Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. The impossibility of it all amazes even the one who experienced it. Miracles remain miraculous, even to those who receive them. On the 8th day, Abraham circumcises Isaac according to divine command. The covenant sign marks this child as belonging to God's chosen people. His flesh bears the symbol of promises that stretch beyond his individual life into national destiny. The camp celebrates with unprecedented joy. Food is prepared, stories are told, songs are sung. Isaac's birth represents vindication for Sarah, fulfillment for Abraham, and hope for all who trust divine promises. The impossible has become inevitable, yet complexity enters the celebration. Ishmael, now 15 years old, watches his father's joy with mixed emotions. For 13 years, he was the only son, the apparent heir, the focus of Abraham's paternal love. Now a baby commands attention that once belonged exclusively to him. Sarah notices Ishmael's attitude and sees threat where others might see natural jealousy. The older son's presence complicates the younger son's future. Two heirs in one household create competition that Sarah fears will endanger Isaac's inheritance. But these concerns lie in the future. Today belongs to celebration. Today marks the triumph of faith over impossibility. Today proves that divine promises find fulfillment despite human limitations. Isaac grows strong under his parents' delighted care. Every milestone brings fresh wonder. His first smile, his first word, his first steps all carry the weight of answered prayer. This child embodies hope in human form. Abraham watches his son with eyes that have seen divine faithfulness proven again and again. From the call in Ur to this moment in the tent, God has remained true to every promise. Isaac's existence testifies to divine reliability in a world of uncertainty. The name Isaac means laughter, and laughter indeed fills the household. Sarah's joy overflows in constant delight. Abraham's happiness shows in his protective care. Even the servants smile more often now that the master's greatest desire has been fulfilled. Years of waiting have ended in moments of pure joy. Decades of barrenness have given way to fertility beyond imagination. The promise that seemed impossible has proven to be inevitable. God's word has triumphed over every obstacle. Isaac's birth marks a turning point in the covenant story. The child of promise has arrived, the heir of blessing has been born. The future of divine purpose now sleeps peacefully in Sarah's arms, breathing softly the breath of miracle. Hagar and Ishmael sent away celebration fills Abraham's camp as Isaac reaches the age of weaning. This milestone marks a child's transition from infancy to childhood, from complete dependence to growing independence. In ancient culture, the weaning feast represents survival past the most dangerous years of life. Abraham prepares a great feast to honor this moment. Servants prepare elaborate food. Neighbors gather to share the joy. Music and laughter flow through the camp like water through desert channels. Isaac has not merely survived, he has thrived under his parents' devoted care. But in the midst of celebration, Sarah's eyes catch something that chills her heart. Ishmael, now about 17 years old, is playing with little Isaac in a way that troubles her deeply. The text simply says he was laughing or playing, but Sarah sees something more troubling in his behavior. Perhaps Ishmael mocks the younger child. Perhaps he plays too roughly with the toddler. Perhaps he simply acts like the teenager he is, not realizing that his games might harm his little half-brother. Whatever the exact nature of his behavior, Sarah perceives it as a threat. Her reaction is swift and absolute. She goes to Abraham with a demand that cuts like a blade through the festive atmosphere. Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. The request strikes Abraham like a physical blow. Sarah asks him to banish Hagar and Ishmael, the servant who has lived in his household for years and the son he has loved for 17 years. The demand seems cruel beyond measure. Abraham's heart breaks at the thought. Ishmael is his firstborn son, the child who brought him joy for 13 years before Isaac's birth. This boy has known no father but Abraham, no home but this camp. To send him away feels like tearing away part of his own soul. The situation reveals the complex dynamics of ancient family life. Sarah's demand makes practical sense from her perspective. Ishmael's presence complicates Isaac's inheritance. As the older son, Ishmael might claim legal rights that could diminish Isaac's portion. Her maternal instincts drive her to protect her child's future. But Abraham sees beyond legal complications to personal relationships. Ishmael is his son, regardless of his mother's status. The boy has done nothing deserving of exile. To cast him out into the wilderness seems both unjust and dangerous. The matter is very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. The Hebrew text emphasizes his emotional distress. This is not a simple family dispute, but a crisis that threatens to tear apart relationships he holds dear. Divine intervention comes in Abraham's darkest hour of decision. God speaks to him with words that carry both command and comfort. Be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. The command stuns Abraham. God actually sides with Sarah in this painful dispute. The divine perspective sees necessities that human emotion obscures. Isaac must inherit the covenant promises without competition from Ishmael. But God's command comes with gracious assurance, and I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. Ishmael will not perish in exile. Divine blessing will follow him into the wilderness. His future, though different from Isaac's, remains bright with promise. The divine word transforms impossible choice into obedient action. Abraham rises early the next morning, his heart heavy, but his path clear. He takes bread and a skin of water, provisions for the journey ahead, and gives them to Hagar. He places the supplies on Hagar's shoulder and sends her away with Ishmael. The simple description masks profound anguish. A father says goodbye to his son, perhaps forever. A master dismisses a faithful servant into uncertainty. Love and obedience collide in heartbreaking surrender. Hagar and Ishmael depart from the only home the boy has ever known. They wander into the wilderness of Beersheba, each step taking them further from security and familiarity. The water Abraham provided will not last long in the desert heat. When the water runs out, despair overtakes Hagar. She places Ishmael under one of the bushes for whatever shade it might provide. Then she goes a bow shot's distance away and sits down. She cannot bear to watch her son die of thirst. "Let me not look on the death of the child," she says, weeping bitterly. The cry of a mother's heart echoes across the wilderness. All her hopes, all her dreams, all her love for this boy seem destined to end in tragedy. But God hears the boy's cry. Divine attention focuses on the dying child rather than the weeping mother. God heard the voice of the boy, the text emphasizes. Heaven notices the young, the vulnerable, the innocent, caught in circumstances beyond their control. The angel of God calls to Hagar from heaven with words of comfort and command. "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Divine intervention transforms despair into hope. The child who seemed destined to die will live to father a great nation. The boy whom Sarah cast out carries divine promise in his bloodline. God's blessing extends beyond the covenant family to embrace all of Abraham's offspring. Then God opens Hagar's eyes and she sees a well of water nearby. The provision was there all along, hidden from desperate sight. She fills the water skin and gives the boy a drink. Life returns to replace death. Hope replaces despair. God remains with Ishmael as he grows up in the wilderness. The boy becomes an expert archer, skilled in desert survival. His mother finds him a wife from her homeland of Egypt. The family that began in Abraham's tent continues its story in the wilderness. Ishmael settles in the wilderness of Paran, far from his father's camp, but not beyond divine care. He fathers 12 sons who become princes of tribes. The promise to Abraham proves true. Ishmael becomes a great nation. The painful separation serves divine purposes that human hearts cannot easily understand. Isaac's inheritance is secured. Ishmael's future is guaranteed. Both sons receive blessing, though in different forms and different places. Abraham's camp grows quieter after their departure. The tent that once echoed with 2 sons' voices now hears only Isaac's laughter. The patriarch carries the wound of separation in his heart, but also the peace of obedience to divine will. The story reveals the complex interplay between human emotion and divine purpose. God's plans sometimes require painful choices. His blessings often come through unexpected paths. What seems like rejection may actually be divine protection and provision. Both Sarah and Hagar, in their different ways, acted from maternal love. Both sons received divine blessing, though through different channels. The God who sees all hearts provides for all his children, even when human families cannot contain them all. Treaty at Beersheba. The desert wind carries whispers of change. Abraham stands at the edge of his camp, watching dust clouds approach from the north. King Abimelech returns, but not as an enemy this time. Peace walks beside him. Years have passed since their last encounter. The memory of Sarah, nearly lost to deception, lingers between them. Yet something deeper draws the Philistine king back to Abraham's tents. Perhaps it's the way prosperity follows this Hebrew wanderer. Maybe it's the quiet power that seems to surround him like morning mist. Abimelech brings his commander Phicol and advisors. Their approach signals respect, not conquest. God is with you in everything you do, the king declares. These words carry weight in the ancient world. When rulers acknowledge divine favor, treaties become possible. Abraham receives them with customary hospitality, water for dusty feet, shade from the merciless sun, food to strengthen weary travelers. But beneath courtesy lies careful calculation. Trust must be earned, even from kings who speak of God's blessing. The negotiation centers on water. In this harsh land, wells mean survival. Abraham's servants have dug deep into the earth, coaxing precious water from stone and sand. But Abimelech's men have seized one well by force. The theft cuts deeper than mere property loss. It threatens the foundation of nomadic life. "Swear to me here before God," Abimelech requests, "that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants. Show me the same kindness I have shown you." The king's words reveal hidden fear. This wandering patriarch somehow commands respect that armies cannot compel. Abraham agrees, but conditions accompany his consent. The seized well must be acknowledged as his rightful property. Compensation flows both ways in ancient diplomacy. The king accepts these terms without protest. 7 ewe lambs stand apart from the larger flocks. Abraham presents them ceremonially to Abimelech. These animals serve as witnesses, their presence transforming agreement into sacred covenant. The king accepts them, understanding their symbolic weight. "What is the meaning of these 7 lambs?" Abimelech asks, though he already knows. Ancient rituals require proper questions and responses. "Accept these from my hand," Abraham replies, "that they may be a witness that I dug this well." The exchange creates binding obligation. Future generations will remember this moment when disputes arise. They name the place Beersheba, the well of the oath. The name carries double meaning. 7 lambs witness the covenant. An oath seals the agreement. Language itself becomes monument to peace. The treaty establishes more than water rights. It creates a sphere of mutual respect in hostile territory. Abraham gains security for his growing clan. Abimelech secures neutrality from a man whose God intervenes in human affairs. After the king departs, Abraham plants a tamarisk tree. The hardy shrub will outlive the men who made this treaty. Its roots will drink from the disputed well. Its shade will shelter future generations who remember this day. Beneath the spreading branches, Abraham calls upon the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. Prayer rises like morning incense. The eternal nature of his God contrasts with the temporary nature of human agreements. Kings die, treaties fade, but the Lord endures forever. The well of Beersheba becomes more than a water source. It represents Abraham's first legal foothold in the Promised Land. No longer does he depend solely on hospitality or temporary agreements. He has established permanent presence through recognized covenant. Water bubbles up from the earth, cold and sweet. Flocks gather to drink. Children splash in the shallows. Life flourishes around this negotiated peace. The well will water Isaac's flocks. Jacob will dream of ladders here. Generations will remember the day their ancestor made treaty with a king. Yet beneath celebration lies deeper truth. Abraham's real security comes not from human agreements, but from divine promise. Treaties may fail, wells may run dry, but God's covenant endures beyond the reach of earthly powers. The tamarisk tree grows slowly in desert soil. Its roots reach deep, seeking hidden water. Like Abraham's faith, it finds strength in places others cannot see. The tree will stand long after its planter rests in the earth, testament to the day peace was possible between wandering shepherd and settled king. The testing of Abraham, Akita, Part 1. Silence stretches across the desert night. Stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns. Abraham lies awake, listening to the quiet breathing of his camp. Peace has settled over his household like a warm blanket. Isaac sleeps safely nearby. Sarah rests without fear. All seems well in the world. Then God speaks. The voice comes not with thunder or earthquake, but with terrible gentleness. Abraham. The patriarch knows this voice. It has called him from Ur, promised him descendants, established covenants, but tonight it carries a weight that makes his soul tremble. "Here I am," Abraham responds, as he always has. These words have marked every encounter with the divine. They signal readiness, availability, trust, but tonight they will lead somewhere unimaginable. "Take your son." God continues, "Your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." The words fall like stones into still water. Ripples of shock spread through Abraham's consciousness. Sacrifice Isaac? The boy of promise? The child of laughter? The heir through whom all nations will be blessed? Abraham's mind reels against the command. Every fiber of his being cries out in protest. This boy represents everything God has promised. Isaac carries the future in his young body. Through him, descendants will multiply like stars and sand. How can God now demand his death? The patriarch knows the practices of surrounding peoples. Child sacrifice stains many altars in Canaan, but Abraham's God has seemed different. His commands have brought life, not death. His promises have opened futures, not closed them. Yet now this same God demands the unthinkable. Sleep abandons Abraham completely. He rises and walks among his sleeping flocks. The familiar sounds of night, breathing animals, shifting tent ropes, distant jackal calls seem suddenly foreign. His world has tilted on its axis. Nothing looks the same in this new reality. Questions torment his mind like desert thorns. Is this truly God's voice or some evil deception? Has he misunderstood the command? Could God mean something symbolic rather than literal? The silence offers no comfort, no clarification, no escape. Abraham returns to his tent and stares at Isaac's sleeping face. The boy has grown strong and tall. His laughter rings through the camp each day. His questions about life and faith delight his aged father. How can this child become a sacrifice? Yet beneath the horror lies a deeper agony. If God truly requires Isaac's death, it means the promise itself dies too. No descendants through Isaac. No great nation. No blessing for all peoples. Everything collapses into ash and sorrow. The patriarch has obeyed God's voice for decades. He left his homeland at divine command. He trusted impossible promises about descendants and land. He believed when Sarah laughed at the prospect of childbirth. He has staked everything on God's faithfulness. Now that same faithfulness seems to demand faithlessness. God asks Abraham to destroy the very thing he promised to establish. The test cuts to the heart of trust itself. Will Abraham obey even when obedience appears to contradict everything he has believed? Dawn approaches with cruel inevitability. Servants will soon stir. Isaac will wake with his customary smile. Sarah will begin her daily routines. Life will continue as if the world has not shattered in the night. Abraham makes his choice in the gray hour before sunrise. He will obey, not because he understands, not because the command makes sense, not because he feels ready or willing. He will obey because God has spoken, and that must be enough. The patriarch wakes two young servants quietly. He does not disturb Sarah or explain his mission. Some journeys must be walked alone, even when others travel alongside. He chooses wood for the offering, knife for the sacrifice, fire to kindle the flame. Isaac stirs as preparations conclude. "Father," he asks sleepily, "are we going somewhere?" Abraham's heart fractures at the innocent question. "Yes, my son, we are going to worship." The words carry truth, though not the truth Isaac expects. They will indeed worship, though the worship will demand everything. The boy rises eagerly, excited by unexpected adventure. He helps load the donkey without suspicion. To Isaac, this is simply another journey with his beloved father. He cannot imagine that he is preparing for his own death. Abraham saddles the animal with trembling hands. Each motion feels weighted with finality. The familiar tasks of travel, securing loads, checking water, planning the route, take on horrific significance. He is preparing to sacrifice his son. The little company sets out as the sun crests the eastern hills. Abraham leads the donkey. Isaac walks beside him, chattering about the journey ahead. The servants follow, unaware of their master's anguish. No one suspects they are walking toward the greatest test faith has ever faced. The Testing of Abraham, Akita, Part 2. The journey to Moriah stretches like a lifetime, compressed into 3 days. Each step carries Abraham deeper into the valley of decision. Each mile increases the weight pressing on his heart. Isaac walks beside him, trusting and innocent, while the knife in Abraham's pack seems to burn against the donkey's hide. On the first day, conversation flows easily. Isaac asks about their destination. Abraham speaks vaguely of worship and sacrifice. The boy accepts these explanations without suspicion. Why would he doubt his father's word? They have traveled together many times, always returning safely home. The second day brings quieter walking. Abraham's responses grow shorter. His eyes scan the horizon constantly, searching for the mountain God will reveal. Each peak they pass might be the place. Each hill could be the altar. The uncertainty gnaws at his composure like a persistent wound. Isaac notices his father's strange mood, but attributes it to travel weariness. The boy tries to lighten the atmosphere with stories and questions about the flocks left behind. His cheerful chatter creates a counterpoint to Abraham's inner turmoil. Life and death walk side by side on the dusty road. The servants remain unaware of their master's struggle. They see only an old man taking his son to offer sacrifice, a common enough journey in these lands. They cannot hear the war raging in Abraham's soul. They cannot see the tears he sheds in the pre-dawn darkness, while others sleep. The third morning dawns clear and bright. As they break camp, Abraham's eyes are drawn to a specific mountain in the distance. Something about its shape, its position, its presence speaks to his spirit. This is the place. God has shown him the altar. "Stay here with the donkey," Abraham tells the servants. His voice carries finality that stops all questions. "The boy and I will go over there to worship, and then we will come back to you." The words surprise even Abraham as he speaks them. "We will come back." Does he truly believe this, or is he simply trying to prevent the servants from interfering? Deep in his heart, a small flame of hope still flickers. Perhaps God will provide another way. Perhaps this test will end differently than it appears. Isaac helps transfer the wood from the donkey to his own shoulders. The boy is strong enough to carry the load that will fuel his own sacrifice. Abraham takes the fire pot and the knife. Father and son begin the final ascent alone. The mountain path winds upward through scattered stones and thorny shrubs. Each step brings them closer to the crisis that will define them both forever. Isaac's breathing grows labored under the wood's weight, but he does not complain. He trusts his father completely. Halfway up the slope, Isaac breaks the heavy silence. "Father?" The word carries innocent confusion. "Yes, my son?" Abraham's voice nearly breaks on the response. "I see the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" The question pierces Abraham's heart like a dagger. This boy, this precious child, still thinks they are offering an animal sacrifice. He has no idea that he himself is the intended offering. His trust in his father remains absolute and unshaken. Abraham stops walking and looks into Isaac's questioning eyes. For a moment, he cannot speak. The truth hovers on his lips, but he cannot voice it. Instead, he finds words that carry both honesty and hope. "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." The answer satisfies Isaac completely. Of course, God will provide. When has the Almighty ever failed them? The boy adjusts the wood on his shoulders and continues climbing. Abraham follows, marveling at the faith his words have revealed. Even in this darkest hour, he still believes God will provide. They reach the summit as the sun approaches its peak. The spot Abraham chooses feels ancient and sacred. Here on this windswept height, earth touches heaven. Here the greatest test of faith will reach its climax. Abraham begins building the altar with steady hands, each stone placed with care, each arrangement checked for stability. Isaac helps eagerly, still unaware of his role in the coming sacrifice. The boy's assistance adds weight to every moment. The altar complete, Abraham arranges the wood with practiced precision. Years of offering sacrifices have taught him how to build fires that burn hot and clean. This fire must be perfect. This offering must be complete. If God requires this sacrifice, it will be done properly. Only then does Abraham turn to face his son. Isaac stands beside the altar, patient and trusting. The moment of revelation has arrived. The truth can no longer be hidden or delayed. "Isaac," Abraham says softly. The boy looks up with bright eyes, ready for whatever his father requires. He has no fear, no suspicion, no understanding of what comes next. Abraham's hands shake as he reaches for the ropes. His movements are gentle but sure. Isaac submits without struggle, though confusion clouds his features. Trust overcomes fear. Love conquers resistance. The boy allows himself to be bound because his father requires it. Only when Isaac lies on the altar does understanding dawn. The lamb God will provide is himself. The sacrifice demanded is his own life. Yet even then, he does not fight or cry out. His faith in his father runs deeper than his fear of death. Abraham lifts the knife with trembling hands. The blade catches sunlight and throws it back in brilliant flashes. This is the moment of ultimate testing. Everything depends on what happens next. Aftermath of the test. The angel's voice still echoes across the mountain when Abraham's knees buckle. The knife falls from nerveless fingers, clattering against the stones. Isaac lies bound on the altar, eyes wide with shock and wonder. Father and son stare at each other across a chasm of emotion neither can fully comprehend. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," the voice had commanded. "Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham's hands shake as he unties the ropes. Isaac sits up slowly, rubbing circulation back into his wrists. Neither speaks. Words seem inadequate for what has just transpired between heaven and earth. The silence stretches, heavy with unspoken thoughts. A rustling in the thicket breaks the quiet. There, caught by its horns in the tangled branches, stands a ram. The animal struggles briefly, then grows still, as if accepting its fate. God has indeed provided the lamb for the offering. Abraham helps Isaac down from the altar. The boy's legs tremble slightly, but his eyes hold no accusation. Trust remains intact, though forever changed. They have walked together through the valley of the shadow of death and emerged on the other side. The ram substitutes for Isaac on the rebuilt altar. Flames consume the offering while father and son watch in reverent silence. Smoke rises straight up in the still air, carrying their gratitude toward heaven. The scent of burning sacrifice mingles with the smell of thorns and wild herbs. Abraham names the place "the Lord will provide." The Hebrew phrase Jehovah Jireh will echo through generations. On the mountain of the Lord, provision appears when all hope seems lost. Even in the darkest hour, God makes a way forward. The angel speaks again as the fire burns low. God's voice carries renewed promise and expanded blessing. Because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. The familiar promises take on new depth. Abraham has proved his faith beyond doubt. The covenant now rests on demonstrated obedience rather than mere verbal agreement. The patriarch has shown he will hold nothing back from God, not even his most precious possession. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies. The angel continues, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. Isaac listens to these words with new understanding. He is no longer simply Abraham's son, but a link in God's eternal plan. His life, spared by divine intervention, carries destiny beyond his own existence. He bears the weight and wonder of being chosen. They descend the mountain in thoughtful quiet. The servants wait where they were left, unaware of the drama that has unfolded above. To them, Abraham and Isaac appear slightly subdued but otherwise unchanged. They cannot see the invisible scars left by testing. The journey home passes in contemplative silence. Isaac walks differently now, not with less trust, but with deeper awareness. He has felt the edge of death and been pulled back by God's mercy. Life tastes sweeter for having been so nearly lost. Abraham's relationship with Isaac shifts subtly but permanently. The willingness to sacrifice has been proved, but it need never be proved again. Love deepened by testing creates bonds stronger than steel. They understand each other in ways that require no words. Sarah waits anxiously for their return. Something in Abraham's face tells her that significant events have occurred, though he does not immediately share details. Isaac embraces his mother with unusual intensity. She senses change but does not press for explanations. The ram's horns hang in Abraham's tent as a reminder. When doubts arise or faith wavers, he need only look at them to remember God's provision. The Lord who provided a substitute sacrifice will provide for every need according to his perfect timing. Isaac carries his own memories of the mountain, the feeling of rough stone against his back, the glint of sunlight on the knife blade, his father's tears falling like rain, the angel's voice splitting the silence. These images will shape his understanding of God for the rest of his life. The test has ended, but its effects will ripple through generations. Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac becomes the gold standard of faith. The mountain where God provided will be remembered as the place where true worship was offered and accepted. In quiet moments, Abraham reflects on the strange mathematics of divine testing. He was asked to give up everything to receive everything. He was commanded to destroy the promise in order to secure it. He was required to demonstrate faith by actions that seemed to contradict faith itself. The paradox no longer troubles him as it once did. God's ways transcend human logic. Divine wisdom operates on principles that finite minds cannot fully grasp. Faith means trusting when understanding fails, obeying when circumstances seem to counsel resistance. Isaac grows into manhood, bearing the invisible mark of one who has been offered and redeemed. His life carries extra weight because it was bought back from death. He will father Jacob. The nation will emerge from one who was saved by substitute sacrifice. The mountain stands silent under the stars. Wind whispers through the thorns where the ram was caught. The altar stones settle deeper into the earth. But the memory of what happened here will never fade. God provided, he always provides. On the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. Sarah's death and burial. The tent that once rang with Sarah's laughter grows quiet as age settles over Abraham's camp. Sarah's hair has turned white as desert salt. Her hands, once quick with hospitality, move more slowly now. Yet her eyes still sparkle when Isaac visits with stories of his growing flocks. 127 years Sarah has walked this earth. She has seen empires rise and fall. She has witnessed the building of great cities and the destruction of wicked ones. She has lived through famine and plenty, fear and joy, barrenness and abundance. Now her time draws to a close. The end comes gently, like evening shadows lengthening across familiar ground. Sarah feels the weariness in her bones one morning and knows this day will be different. She calls Isaac close and whispers her final blessings. Her words carry the wisdom of a lifetime spent learning to trust God's timing. Abraham sits beside her as her breathing grows shallow. Their hands intertwine, aged fingers remembering the strength they once possessed. Together they have journeyed from Ur to Egypt to Canaan. Together they have doubted and believed, failed and triumphed, waited and received. Now one journey ends while another begins. When Sarah's spirit departs, Abraham's grief overwhelms him like a flood. This woman who laughed at God's promise and then held that promise in her arms, she is gone. The tent that sheltered their love for more than a century stands empty. The voice that called him husband falls silent forever. Isaac weeps beside his father. Sarah was not just his mother, but his dearest friend. She who waited so long for his birth treasured every moment of his childhood. Her death leaves a void that no other person can fill. The camp feels smaller without her presence. Abraham's mourning follows ancient customs but carries personal depth. He tears his garments and covers his head with dust. He fasts and prays and remembers. Each tear carries a memory: Sarah's beauty in Ur, her fear in Egypt, her laughter at Isaac's birth, her joy at his safe return from Moriah. When the initial shock passes, practical matters demand attention. Sarah's body must be prepared for burial according to proper tradition. But where can she be laid to rest? Abraham owns no land in Canaan beyond the temporary grazing rights negotiated with local tribes. He needs a permanent resting place for his beloved wife. The Hittites control the area around Hebron, where Abraham has often camped. Their city sits in the valley while their fields stretch across the surrounding hills. Among them lives Ephron, who owns a cave in the field of Machpelah. The burial site appeals to Abraham for its security and dignity. Abraham approaches the Hittites with his request: "I am a foreigner and stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so I can bury my dead." His words acknowledge his outsider status while appealing to their sense of hospitality. The Hittites respond with elaborate courtesy. "You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you his tomb for burying your dead." Their offer seems generous, but Abraham recognizes the trap hidden within politeness. A gift can be reclaimed. Hospitality can be withdrawn. What is given freely can be taken back when circumstances change. Abraham needs legal ownership, not charitable gesture. He must purchase the cave if his family is to rest there permanently. "If you are willing to let me bury my dead," Abraham replies, "then listen to me and intercede with Ephron, son of Zohar, on my behalf, so he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price as a burial site among you." Ephron himself sits among the elders gathered at the city gate. Business is conducted publicly in this culture. Witnesses ensure that agreements are honored and remembered. The cave owner speaks directly to Abraham with flowery generosity. "No, my lord, listen to me. I give you the field and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead." Again, the offer of a gift, wrapped in honor but carrying hidden dangers. Abraham bows politely but persists in his desire to purchase. "Listen to me, if you will. I will pay the price of the field. Accept it from me so I can bury my dead there." He will not be turned aside from legal ownership, no matter how generous the alternatives appear. Ephron names his price with casual air. "Land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? Bury your dead." The amount represents enormous wealth, far more than the cave's actual value. But Abraham pays without haggling, weighing out the silver before all the witnesses. The transaction is recorded carefully. Abraham purchases not just the cave, but the entire field surrounding it. Trees and borders are specified. Rights and access are defined. What belongs to Abraham and his descendants is established beyond dispute. Sarah is buried in the cave of Machpelah with dignity befitting the mother of promise. Abraham's tears water the ground that now belongs to his family. This first piece of Canaan, bought with silver and sealed with sorrow, becomes the foundation of his descendants' inheritance. The cave holds more than Sarah's body. It contains the dreams they shared, the promises they believed, the love they nurtured through decades of wandering. Here lies the woman who left her homeland to follow her husband's God. Here rests the mother whose laughter welcomed impossible joy. Abraham returns to his tent changed by loss. The familiar spaces echo with Sarah's absence. Her weaving sits half-finished. Her cooking vessels stand unused. The bed they shared stretches empty beside him. Grief becomes his constant companion, softening only with time's passage. Yet even in sorrow, purpose remains. Isaac needs a wife. The promise requires continuation. God's plan cannot be derailed by death, however painful. Abraham must arrange his son's future while honoring his wife's memory. Love must yield to responsibility, though the yielding brings its own agony. The cave of Machpelah stands ready to receive other members of Abraham's family when their time comes. It will shelter Abraham himself in due season. Isaac and Rebekah will rest there. Jacob and Leah will join them. The first real estate purchase in Canaan becomes the family tomb for generations. Sarah's legacy lives on in Isaac's laughter, in the promises yet to be fulfilled, in the faith that persisted through decades of waiting. She who was beautiful enough to attract kings becomes mother to multitudes. She who doubted God's word lives to see that word come true. Death cannot diminish such a heritage. Finding a wife for Isaac, Part 1. 3 years pass after Sarah's burial, and Abraham notices the change in Isaac. His son moves through daily routines with quiet efficiency, but lacks the joy that once marked his steps. Grief has aged him beyond his years. The tent where Sarah once bustled with activity stands largely empty, visited only for sleeping. Abraham recognizes the signs because he feels them himself. Loneliness settles over their camp like dust after a sandstorm. Isaac needs more than flocks and servants to fill his days. He needs a companion, a helpmeet, a woman who can restore laughter to their dwelling place. But finding a wife for Isaac presents unique challenges. The local Canaanite women worship foreign gods and follow customs that would compromise Isaac's faith. Their fathers practice rituals that honor idols rather than the one true God. Marriage into such families would dilute the promise and confuse future generations. Abraham's thoughts turn northward to Nahor, his brother's city. There, among his own people, live women who share his heritage, if not his faith. Family ties run deep in that place. Customs remain familiar. A wife chosen from among his relatives would understand Isaac's background and calling. Yet Abraham himself cannot make the journey. His years weigh heavily now, and travel to Nahor would take months. The dangers of the road seem greater than his aging body can bear. He needs a representative, someone trusted enough to choose wisely on Isaac's behalf. His chief servant has served the household faithfully for decades. This man oversees all Abraham's possessions and makes decisions in his master's absence. If anyone can be trusted with such a delicate mission, it is this experienced and devoted bondsman. Abraham calls his servant aside for private conversation. "Put your hand under my thigh," he instructs, following ancient custom for the most serious oaths. The gesture creates sacred obligation between them. What is promised here cannot be broken without divine judgment. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I am living. The prohibition is absolute. Isaac must not marry locally, regardless of beauty or convenience or political advantage. The servant understands the weight of this charge. He has watched Isaac grow from miraculous birth to thoughtful manhood. He has seen the boy's faith tested on Moriah and strengthened by trial. This young man's marriage will affect not only his personal happiness, but the continuation of God's promise to Abraham. But what if the woman is unwilling to come back with me to this land? The servant asks practically. Shall I then take your son back to the country you came from? The question reveals careful thought about potential complications. Abraham's response comes swiftly and firmly. Make sure that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household and my native land, and who spoke to me and promised me on oath, saying, to your offspring I will give this land, he will send his angel before you so that you can get a wife for my son from there. The patriarch's faith shines through his instructions. God, who called him from Ur, will provide a wife for Isaac from Nahor. Divine providence that has guided their steps for decades will not fail in this crucial matter. The angel of the Lord will prepare the way. If the woman is unwilling to come back with you, Abraham continues, then you will be released from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there. Isaac must remain in Canaan, the land of promise, regardless of whether a suitable wife can be found elsewhere. The servant swears the oath with full understanding. He will journey to Nahor with Abraham's authority and God's guidance. He will seek a woman worthy of Isaac among Abraham's relatives. He will not return empty-handed if divine providence provides success. Preparations for the journey begin immediately. 10 camels are selected from Abraham's herds, enough to carry gifts and supplies while impressing Isaac's potential in-laws with the family's prosperity. The servant chooses valuable items that display Abraham's wealth: jewelry, fine fabrics, precious metals, aromatic spices. The gifts serve multiple purposes. They demonstrate Isaac's ability to provide for a wife. They honor the bride's family with tokens of respect. They create obligations that encourage favorable consideration of the marriage proposal. In ancient culture, such gestures carry weight beyond mere politeness. Abraham blesses the mission personally before departure. His prayers rise like incense, asking God's guidance for his servant's steps. The success of this journey will determine Isaac's future and the continuation of the promise. Everything depends on finding the right woman in Nahor's marketplace. The caravan departs at dawn, laden with hopes as well as gifts. Abraham watches until the dust cloud disappears beyond the horizon. Isaac stands beside his father, both men united in prayer for success. Behind them, the empty tent waits for new laughter to fill its silence. Days stretch into weeks as the journey unfolds. The servant guides his camels northward through familiar territory, retracing paths Abraham once walked in reverse. Each mile brings him closer to Nahor, closer to the encounter that will shape Isaac's destiny. The way is long and sometimes dangerous. Desert winds scour exposed skin. Water must be carefully rationed between known wells. Bandits haunt certain passages, waiting for unwary travelers. But the servant presses forward, sustained by his oath and his master's prayers. Finally, the walls of Nahor appear on the horizon. The city bustles with activity as evening approaches. Women emerge from their homes to draw water from the communal well. Young and old, beautiful and plain, they gather for this daily ritual that sustains life in the ancient world. The servant stops his camels outside the city as shadows lengthen across the ground. This is the moment of testing. Here at this well, God will reveal Isaac's bride. The faithful bondsman prepares to witness divine providence at work in the simple interactions of daily life. Finding a wife for Isaac, Part 2. The well outside Nahor buzzes with evening activity as women arrive carrying empty jars on their shoulders. The servant watches from his position near the camels, studying each face for signs of character and kindness. His heart beats steadily as he prepares to witness God's guidance in this most crucial selection. Prayer rises silently from his lips as the women draw near. Lord, God of my master Abraham, make me successful today and show kindness to my master Abraham. See, I am standing beside this spring, and the daughters of the townspeople are coming out to draw water. The test he proposes to God reveals wisdom gained through years of observing human nature. Beauty fades, but character endures. A woman's response to a stranger's request will reveal more about her heart than any formal introduction could accomplish. May it be that when I say to a young woman, "Please let down your jar that I may have a drink," and she says, "Drink, and I'll water your camels too," let her be the one you have chosen for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master. The prayer shows remarkable faith. The servant asks for a specific sign that goes beyond normal courtesy. Offering water to a thirsty traveler is expected hospitality, but volunteering to water 10 thirsty camels, that requires exceptional kindness and generous spirit. Before his prayer ends, a young woman approaches the well. Her bearing suggests nobility mixed with humility. She moves with graceful confidence, neither proud nor timid. The water jar balanced on her shoulder appears light in her capable hands. Her beauty strikes the servant immediately. Not the painted attractiveness of city women, but the natural radiance of health and joy. Her skin glows with outdoor vitality. Her eyes sparkle with intelligence and warmth. This is a woman who finds delight in simple living. She fills her jar efficiently and prepares to return home. The servant hurries forward, his heart pounding with anticipation. "Please give me a little water from your jar," he requests, making his voice deliberately weak and weary. "Drink, my lord," she responds immediately, lowering her jar without hesitation. Her manner shows genuine concern for his comfort. She waits patiently while he drinks, showing no impatience to return to her own responsibilities. When the servant finishes drinking, the young woman speaks the words that confirm divine guidance. "I'll draw water for your camels too, until they have had enough to drink." She offers the service freely, without being asked, exactly as the servant had prayed. The magnitude of her offer becomes clear as she begins the task. 10 camels can drink enormous quantities after a long journey. Each animal might consume 25 gallons or more. The woman has volunteered for an hour's hard labor to serve a complete stranger. She works efficiently, running between the well and the drinking trough. Her jar empties and refills repeatedly as she pours water for the thirsty animals. Sweat beads on her forehead, but she continues without complaint until every camel drinks its fill. The servant watches in amazement. God has answered his prayer before he finished speaking. This woman displays exactly the character Isaac needs. Selfless service, generous heart, willing hands. Her actions reveal a soul prepared for the responsibilities of marriage into Abraham's covenant family. When the camels finish drinking, the servant produces a gold nose ring weighing half a shekel and 2 gold bracelets weighing 10 shekels. The jewelry represents significant wealth, enough to support a family for months. He offers these gifts as tokens of gratitude and signs of his master's prosperity. "Whose daughter are you?" he asks, his voice trembling with excitement. "Please tell me, is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night?" The questions seem casual, but they carry the weight of destiny. Everything depends on her family connections. "I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Nahor and Milcah," she replies. The words strike the servant like lightning. Nahor is Abraham's brother. This beautiful, generous woman belongs to the very family he has journeyed to find. God's providence has exceeded his wildest hopes. "And yes," she continues, "we have plenty of straw and fodder, as well as room for you to spend the night." Her invitation demonstrates the hospitality that marks Abraham's relatives. The girl's household will welcome strangers with the same warmth she has shown. The servant bows his head in worship right there beside the well. "Praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master. As for me, the Lord has led me on the journey to the house of my master's relatives." His prayer of thanksgiving echoes across the water. Other women drawing water pause to watch this stranger celebrate beside their well. They cannot understand his joy, but they recognize genuine gratitude when they see it. The young woman, whose name is Rebecca, runs home to share news of the encounter. Her family gathers quickly when she describes the wealthy stranger and his generous gifts. The gold jewelry speaks of possibilities beyond their usual experience. Laban, Rebecca's brother, examines the gifts with calculating eyes. The craftsmanship suggests Egyptian or Mesopotamian origin. The weight indicates substantial resources. This stranger represents opportunity for advantageous connection with distant relatives. "Come, you who are blessed by the Lord," Laban calls out when he reaches the well. "Why are you standing out here? I have prepared the house and a place for the camels." His welcome overflows with enthusiasm born of recognizing profitable possibilities. The servant follows Laban into the city, his camels loaded with gifts that will soon serve a greater purpose. The house of Bethuel bustles with preparation for honored guests. Water for washing, food for feasting, comfortable quarters for resting. Everything is provided with generous spirit. But the servant refuses to eat until he has stated his business. The mission that brought him to Nahor cannot wait for social pleasantries. Isaac's future hangs in the balance of the next few hours. Success or failure will be determined by how Rebecca's family receives his proposal. "I am Abraham's servant," he begins, and proceeds to tell the entire story. He describes his master's prosperity, God's blessings, Sarah's death, Isaac's loneliness, and the specific prayers that led him to their well. He holds nothing back, presenting the full context of his request. The family listens with growing amazement. Abraham's name carries weight even in distant Nahor. Stories of his prosperity and divine favor have traveled the trade routes. The possibility of alliance with such a blessed household appeals to their practical instincts. When the servant finishes his account, he presents his formal request. Now, if you will show kindness and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so I may know which way to turn. The moment of decision has arrived. Laban and Bethuel exchange meaningful glances before responding. This is from the Lord. We can say nothing to you one way or the other. Here is Rebekah. Take her and go, and let her become the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has directed. Their consent comes readily, perhaps too readily. The servant's gifts and Abraham's reputation have made the decision easy, but the most important voice has not yet been heard. Rebekah herself must choose whether to leave her homeland for marriage to a stranger in a distant country. The servant presents additional gifts when the betrothal is confirmed. Jewelry and clothing for Rebekah, precious items for her mother and brother. The generosity demonstrates Isaac's ability to provide for his bride and honor her family. Ancient customs are carefully observed. Feasting follows the formal agreement. The household celebrates this unexpected alliance with Abraham's family. Wine flows freely as toasts are offered for the couple's future happiness. The servant participates politely, but his thoughts remain focused on the return journey. Morning brings the moment of departure. The servant has accomplished his mission successfully, but one crucial element remains uncertain. Will Rebekah willingly leave her family to marry Isaac? Her consent was assumed during negotiations, but now she must personally confirm her choice. Will you go with this man? Her family asks directly. The question hangs in the air like morning mist. Everything depends on her answer. A young woman's decision will determine whether God's promise continues through Isaac's lineage. Rebekah's response comes without hesitation. I will go. Two simple words that change the course of history. She commits herself to an unknown future with a man she has never met, trusting in the same God who guides Abraham's family. Rebekah meets Isaac. The journey from Nahor to Canaan passes in a haze of anticipation and anxiety. Rebekah rides one of the camels, swaying gently with the animal's rhythmic gait. The landscape changes gradually as they travel south, but her thoughts remain fixed on the unknown man who awaits her arrival. Her servant girls chatter excitedly about the adventure, but Rebekah often falls silent, lost in contemplation. What will Isaac look like? How will he receive her? Will they find happiness together, or merely the practical partnership that marks most arranged marriages? The questions multiply with each passing mile. Abraham's servant shares stories of Isaac during the long days of travel. He describes the young man's gentleness with animals, his devotion to his father, his quiet strength in times of trial. But words cannot fully convey a person's character. Rebekah must discover Isaac's true nature through personal encounter. The caravan makes good time across familiar terrain. Wells provide adequate water. Weather remains favorable. Bandits do not trouble their passage. Seems God smooths their path homeward, just as he guided their journey to Nahor. Divine providence continues to bless this union. As they near Abraham's territory, Rebekah's nervousness increases. Soon she will meet not only her future husband, but also the legendary patriarch himself. Abraham's reputation extends throughout the region. Kings respect him. Merchants seek his favor. She will become part of a household marked by God's special calling. Evening approaches as they enter the Negev region, where Isaac often pastures his flocks. The servant's eyes scan the horizon, looking for familiar landmarks. They should reach Abraham's camp before nightfall if their timing proves accurate. The homecoming draws near. Suddenly, the servant points toward a solitary figure walking in a distant field. There is my master Isaac, he announces with obvious relief. He has come out to meditate in the field. The young man's custom of evening reflection has brought him to this providential meeting. Rebekah follows the servant's gaze and sees her future husband for the first time. Even at a distance, Isaac's bearing suggests strength, tempered by gentleness. He moves with unhurried confidence across the familiar ground. This is the man chosen by God to continue Abraham's lineage. Her heart pounds as the distance between them closes. Isaac notices the approaching caravan and walks toward them, curiosity evident in his stride. He recognizes his father's servant, but wonders about the additional travelers and loaded camels. When Rebekah realizes that the approaching figure is indeed Isaac, she quickly dismounts from her camel and covers herself with her veil according to custom. The gesture shows proper modesty while heightening the drama of their first encounter. Ancient proprieties must be observed. Isaac reaches them as the sun touches the western horizon. Golden light bathes the scene, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere for this crucial meeting. The servant quickly explains his successful mission, while Isaac's eyes remain fixed on the veiled woman standing quietly nearby. "This is Rebekah," the servant announces, "daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, whom God has chosen to be your wife." The formal introduction follows protocol, but everyone present senses the deeper significance of this moment. Destinies converge in the gathering dusk. Isaac approaches Rebekah with respectful courtesy. When she lifts her veil, their eyes meet for the first time. What passes between them in that initial gaze remains known only to their hearts. But observers note the immediate softening in Isaac's expression and the quiet acceptance in Rebekah's stance. The servant recounts the entire story of his journey: the prayer at the well, Rebekah's generous response, the family's consent, the gifts exchanged. Isaac listens with growing wonder at God's provision. Every detail confirms divine guidance in this marriage arrangement. Isaac takes Rebekah by the hand, a gesture that seals their betrothal according to ancient custom. His touch is gentle but firm, conveying both protection and affection. She does not pull away, but allows herself to be led toward the camp that will become her new home. They walk together as the first stars appear overhead. Conversation flows easily between them, as if they have known each other for years rather than minutes. The servant follows at a respectful distance, marveling at how naturally they connect despite their different backgrounds. Abraham waits at the camp with obvious anxiety. His weathered face brightens when he sees the returning party. The successful completion of his servant's mission brings joy that mingles with relief. Isaac will not remain alone. The promise will continue through this union. Rebekah meets her future father-in-law with the same gracious spirit she showed at the well. Abraham receives her warmly, recognizing in her the qualities Sarah once possessed. This young woman brings life and laughter back to their household after years of mourning. The wedding celebration follows ancient traditions, but carries special significance. This marriage represents more than the joining of two individuals. It marks the continuation of God's covenant with Abraham through the next generation. The promise finds new hope in this young couple's union. Isaac brings Rebekah into Sarah's tent, the dwelling place that has stood empty since his mother's death. The symbolism is profound. New life entering where death once reigned, hope replacing sorrow, laughter returning where silence had fallen. Their wedding night marks the beginning of a love story that will span decades. Isaac finds comfort for his grief over Sarah's death in Rebekah's companionship. She discovers purpose and belonging in her new role as covenant-bearer's wife. The tent that once sheltered Abraham and Sarah's love now witnesses the beginning of Isaac and Rebekah's journey together. The same God who blessed the first couple extends his favor to the second. Promises pass from generation to generation through the intimate bond of marriage. Abraham watches his son's happiness with deep satisfaction. The loneliness that had settled over Isaac like a shadow lifts with Rebekah's presence. Laughter returns to their dwelling. The future looks bright with possibility and hope. The servant who faithfully accomplished his master's mission receives honor and reward for his success. His prayer at the well has been answered beyond his wildest dreams. God's guidance proved faithful throughout the journey, confirming once again that the Almighty watches over Abraham's household with special care. Under the star-filled desert sky, a new chapter begins in the story of God's chosen people. Isaac and Rebekah's marriage will produce the twin sons who become Israel and Edom. Through their union, the promise made to Abraham continues its march toward fulfillment across the generations. Abraham's final years, peace settles over Abraham's household like evening dew as the patriarch enters his final season. Isaac's marriage to Rebekah has brought renewed joy to the camp. Their love reminds him of his own early years with Sarah, when the future stretched ahead bright with possibility. The old man finds deep satisfaction in watching his son's happiness. Isaac moves with new purpose now. caring for his expanding flocks while building a life with his beloved wife. The loneliness that had clouded his features after Sarah's death has lifted completely. Love heals what time alone could not mend. Rebecca brings energy and laughter to the household that had grown too quiet in recent years. Her presence fills the spaces that Sarah's passing had left empty. She honors the memory of Isaac's mother while creating her own traditions and establishing her own rhythms of daily life. Abraham takes a new wife himself, a woman named Keturah, who brings companionship to his declining years. She cannot replace Sarah. No one could, but she provides gentle care and quiet conversation that make the long days more bearable. Love takes different forms at different seasons of life. Children bless Abraham's union with Keturah: Zimran and Jokshan, Medan and Midian, Ishbak and Shua, 6 sons born to the aged patriarch. These boys will not inherit the covenant promise which belongs to Isaac alone, but they receive their father's love and a portion of his wealth. The birth of these children amazes everyone who knows Abraham's advanced age. Sarah's laughter at the possibility of childbearing seems less extraordinary now that their father continues to produce offspring well past his 100th birthday. God's power to create life defies human understanding of natural limitations. Abraham divides his attention carefully among all his children. Isaac remains the heir of promise, the son through whom God's covenant will continue. But the others receive affection and provision appropriate to their station. A father's love expands to encompass all his offspring. Gifts flow generously from Abraham's wealth to Keturah's sons. Livestock and silver, servants and land rights, each boy receives and establishes his own household when the time comes. But the bulk of the patriarch's possessions remains designated for Isaac, the chosen heir. The sons of Keturah eventually migrate eastward, establishing themselves in lands away from Isaac's territory. This separation prevents future conflicts over inheritance while allowing each family to prosper according to their circumstances. Abraham's wisdom prevents division among his descendants. Ishmael occasionally visits his father's camp, bringing news of his own growing family. The relationship between the half-brothers remains cordial but distant. Isaac and Ishmael respect each other without becoming close friends. Their mothers' rivalry created a gulf that time cannot fully bridge. Abraham watches his various children with mixed emotions. Joy fills his heart when he sees their prosperity and happiness, but he also recognizes the potential for future conflict among their descendants. The peace of his own generation may not survive into the next. His body begins to show the weight of nearly 2 centuries of living. Movements that once were quick and sure become slower and more deliberate. His eyesight dims, though his mind remains sharp. The tent that sheltered his vigorous manhood now accommodates his gradual decline. Yet Abraham's spirit stays strong even as his flesh weakens. He continues to worship daily, offering prayers and sacrifices according to his long-established customs. His faith has deepened through decades of walking with God. Age brings wisdom rather than doubt. Visitors still seek his counsel on matters of law and justice. His reputation for fairness and divine favor draws people from distant regions. Kings and merchants, herdsmen and farmers all recognize his authority in settling disputes and making peace between enemies. Abraham uses these opportunities to speak of the one true God. His testimony plants seeds of faith in hearts that have known only idol worship. Some visitors return to their homelands with new understanding of divine truth. The blessing promised to all nations begins to flow through his witness. The old patriarch spends increasing time in reflection and prayer. Memories flood back like spring rains. His call from Ur, the journey to Canaan, the birth of Isaac, the test on Mount Moriah. Each experience reveals new layers of meaning as he looks back with the perspective of years. He often speaks with Isaac about the promises God has given their family. The covenant must pass intact to the next generation. Isaac needs to understand not just the blessings, but the responsibilities that come with being chosen. Legacy requires both inheritance and stewardship. Rebecca listens to these conversations with growing understanding of her role in God's plan. She carries within her womb the next generation of promise bearers, though she does not yet know this. The future rests in her capable hands as surely as in Isaac's. Abraham's prayers increasingly focus on thanksgiving rather than petition. God has fulfilled his promises beyond imagination. The wandering shepherd from Ur has become father of many nations. His descendants will indeed outnumber the stars and possess the land of Canaan. Divine faithfulness has exceeded human faith. As his strength gradually fails, Abraham finds peace in the certainty of God's unchanging love. Death holds no terror for one who has walked so closely with the Almighty. The same God who called him from his homeland will welcome him into eternal rest. His final months pass quietly in the embrace of family love. Isaac and Rebekah care for him tenderly. Keturah provides gentle nursing. His younger children gather around to receive final blessings. The tent fills with quiet conversations and shared memories. Abraham's legacy extends far beyond his immediate family. The wells he dug still provide water for travelers. The altars he built still mark places where heaven touched earth. The treaties he negotiated still govern relationships between neighboring peoples. His influence will outlast his earthly presence. The aged patriarch looks toward the future with confidence, despite his inability to see it clearly. God's promises do not depend on human strength or wisdom. The covenant will continue through Isaac and his descendants. The blessing will spread to all nations according to divine timing. Death and legacy of Abraham. The morning arrives with unusual stillness, as if creation itself holds its breath. Abraham wakes slowly in his tent, feeling the weight of 175 years pressing upon his aged frame. His breathing comes shallow and measured. Today carries the scent of endings, the quiet gravity of final moments. Isaac sits vigil beside his father's bedside, holding the weathered hand that once built altars across Canaan. Rebekah moves softly nearby, preparing comfort for the dying patriarch. Their presence brings peace to Abraham's heart. The promise will continue through their love and faithfulness. Keturah tends to Abraham's needs with gentle devotion. Though she cannot replace Sarah in his heart, she has brought companionship to his final years. Her quiet strength has been a gift from God, easing the loneliness that might otherwise have consumed his declining days. Abraham's other sons gather as word spreads of their father's condition. Zimran and Jokshan, Medan and Midian, Ishbak and Shua, all come to receive final blessings from the man whose seed they carry. Even Ishmael journeys from his distant territory to honor his aged father. The dying patriarch speaks with each child individually, offering words of wisdom and blessing according to their individual destinies. To Isaac goes the primary inheritance, the covenant promises, the bulk of his wealth, the responsibility of carrying God's plan forward. The others receive generous gifts and paternal love. Abraham's voice grows weak, but his words carry the authority of one who has walked with God for nearly a century. He speaks of divine faithfulness, of promises kept and blessings received. His testimony echoes through the tent like distant thunder, reverberating with power that transcends his failing strength. "The Lord has blessed me in every way," he whispers to those gathered around his bed. His eyes, dim with age, but bright with faith, look beyond the tent walls toward horizons only he can see. Death holds no fear for one who has learned to trust completely in God's goodness. As the sun reaches its peak, Abraham's breathing becomes more labored. His spirit seems to hover between earth and heaven, reluctant to depart but ready to embrace whatever comes next. The tent fills with the presence of the divine, as if angels wait to escort him home. Isaac leans close to catch his father's final words. "Remember the covenant," Abraham breathes. "Trust in God's promises. He who called me from Ur will be faithful to you and your descendants. The land will be yours. The blessing will flow through you to all nations." With these words, Abraham's spirit departs peacefully, like evening shadows settling over familiar ground. The great patriarch who left everything to follow God's call has reached his final destination. His journey from Ur to eternity spans nearly 2 centuries of faithful walking with the Almighty. Isaac and Ishmael set aside their differences to honor their father together. The half-brothers who might have been enemies unite in grief and respect. Abraham's death creates a moment of reconciliation between the 2 branches of his family, if only temporarily. Preparations for burial begin immediately according to ancient customs. Abraham's body is washed and wrapped in fine linen. Aromatic spices preserve his remains for the journey to his final resting place. The care taken reflects the honor due to one of God's chosen servants. The funeral procession travels to Hebron, where the cave of Machpelah awaits. Isaac and Ishmael carry their father's body together, a fitting symbol of unity in their shared loss. Behind them walk Abraham's other children, servants, and friends, a long line of mourners honoring the departed patriarch. The cave where Sarah has rested for 38 years opens to receive her husband. Abraham is laid beside his beloved wife in the burial place he purchased with silver from the Hittites. Together they await the resurrection, their earthly journey complete, but their legacy just beginning. Isaac inherits not only his father's wealth, but also his spiritual responsibility. The covenant promises now rest upon his shoulders. He must be faithful to pass them on to the next generation. The weight of divine calling settles upon him like a mantle. Word of Abraham's death spreads throughout the region like ripples from a stone thrown into still water. Kings who made treaties with him send condolences. Merchants who traded with him share memories of his fairness. Neighbors who knew his hospitality mourn the loss of a good man. But Abraham's greatest legacy lives not in the memories of men, but in the promises of God. The covenant made with a childless wanderer from Ur will continue through Isaac and his descendants. From this one man's faithfulness will come a great nation and blessing for all peoples. The wells Abraham dug continue to provide water for travelers crossing the desert. The altars he built still mark places where heaven touched earth. The trees he planted offer shade to weary sojourners. His practical contributions to the land endure alongside his spiritual influence. Isaac and Rebekah established their household in Beer Lahai Roi, the well where Hagar encountered God. There they will raise the twin sons who will carry the promise forward, Jacob and Esau, through whom the covenant will continue its journey through history toward ultimate fulfillment. The stars that once promised countless descendants to a doubting Abraham now shine upon Isaac and his growing family. Each point of light represents potential heirs to the covenant. The impossible has become inevitable through God's faithfulness and human obedience. Abraham's story ends, but the larger narrative continues. The God who called one man out of pagan darkness will use his descendants to bring light to all nations. The promise made beside smoking sacrifice will find full fulfillment in ways Abraham could never have imagined. Under the desert sky where Abraham once counted stars and believed God's impossible promise, a new generation takes up the torch of faith. Isaac and Rebekah, blessed with the patriarch's legacy, move forward into an unknown future guided by the same divine hand that led their father from Ur to eternity. The cave of Machpelah holds Abraham's bones, but his influence spreads far beyond that limestone tomb. Kings and shepherds, priests and prophets, believers and seekers, all will trace their spiritual lineage back to the man who dared to trust God's call and leave everything familiar for the sake of divine promise. Abraham's laughter mingles with Sarah's in the realm beyond death, where promises kept create eternal joy. Their earthly struggles have ended in heavenly rest, but on earth their story continues through Isaac and the generations yet to come, until God's blessing reaches every corner of creation through their faithful seed.